Salvete, mihi nomen est Stella, et hoc est. Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 234 for June MMXXIII. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So, if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, I'm in the summer blockbuster series, going to be doing war games, and this person was scheduled for a long time to be on this particular series with me. He is a former enemy now. Enemy's too strong. But as an icebreaker, I tell all of his people that he knows, like, I originally didn't like this guy. And now we're like the closest of friends. He's one of the few friends that after or before we hang up on our phone calls, we say, I love you very genuinely. It's my good friend, Joshua Lapin-Bertone.
Oh man, what an introduction. Let me tell you two things. She speaks the truth on two levels. One is like, yeah, she has told like multiple of like the kids, like even that I've worked with, like, oh yeah, like with like this big smile on her face, like I really didn't like this guy, but like and then the other thing too is yes, this is like a very intimate relationship because before we started recording, I just told Stella details about a very personal medical appointment, and I was like, "Do you need me to stop?" And she's like, "Nah, there's no TMI here."
I know
So
it really doesn't exist in our
yeah,
relationship anymore. Yeah. And it was a one-sided like distaste because I think you had like no issues with me. I think you were unaware of my whatever. But it was
I
really
must have
just
been aware on some level, but like,
but it was all message board stuff. And really, San Diego Comic Con that first year just like cemented the triad that is Josh, Donovan, and Stella for sure.
yes, I think that that's also one of the reasons why we're so close, is we've survived Donovan together.
Oof.
All the trials and tribulations of that man.
Absolutely. And his pizza throwing on the roofs.
His pizza. I was about to make a reference to something, but I was like, the poor listeners will be left out in the cold. But we went to a live taping of like the Connors once, and Donovan, like, we were teasing Donovan. He says, I haven't thrown a pizza on a roof in years.
He admitted it. Like, oh man, there's so much happened there. Didn't a guy stand up and bend over right in front of him?
Maybe.
Oh gosh, something was going on in there. Yes. Yeah, so we're talking some war games, which I will ask you a question about your history. But before we get into that, there's really going to be no intro, but have you been doing anything that's been giving you joy? So this is Shag's mac and cheese of comfort and joy. What have you been up to that's brought you some happiness?
So Joy, let's see. Is this like recommendations, like consuming media, or it could
Yeah, it
be
could
like
be.
anything
Yeah.
like personal or whatever?
Yeah.
Um,
Anything that has like brightened your, if you've had some tough times, like what has brought you out of it and has been fun and yeah, you'd like to talk about it.
I will say I've done some restructuring in my professional life recently. That would be too complicated to get into here, but it's been great because it has given me more free time. I've been able to see friends more. I've been able to like be home more, get more rest, and catch up on the work that I really want to be doing, as opposed to like I was kind of grinding on like, side gig jobs that were not making me happy, but they were paying the bills. And I realized that like if I just went all in on some of my more freelance work, knock on wood, because the bottom could always fall out, I could, it was like something clicked in me, and it's the happiest that I've been in a long time. And I'm always nervous saying that because
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, there's kind of that like millennial, like, uncertainty that we all have where like, oh, like something bad could happen at any moment. But that's really been great. And I have a personal anniversary coming up. a milestone in my life, and I'm going to be like honoring that tomorrow. I'm going to a resort in Orlando that I booked for 3 days just to kind of mental health and take some time to myself and rest and relax and self-care, and not for any bad reasons, but to kind of, reflect. It's something that I take June 13th every year to kind of reflect on my, and give myself self-care and treat myself, and that's been nice. So I'm really looking forward to that. So that's been cool. And I guess things I've enjoyed. I took the kids to see Spider-Verse last night, and that's my third time going because I did a press screening, and then I took the bigger kids 2 days ago or 3 days ago now. So that's fun. I saw a press screening for The Flash, which should be out by the time this episode is, depending on the turnaround. So we got to see Keaton back again. So
Thumbs up,
that's
thumbs down for Flash?
I'd say thumbs up.
Okay.
Yeah, there's things that are good. There's things that are so-so. Flash puts the baby in a microwave. That's really weird. You can't see Stella's face right now, listeners, but I can, and her eyebrows just went like,
yeah, I know, like what?
Yeah, you'll see when you see the movie, but like
yeah.
there is, if you're uncomfortable with babies in danger, there is a scene at the beginning of the movie that might make a bunch of you uncomfortable because it really made me uncomfortable. But
okay.
But it's still a fun movie, an action-packed movie, an emotional movie. I liked it. And I definitely like left the theater texting my DC editor, what was with that ending? And I won't say what I'm referring to there. That's a spoiler.
Yeah. Thanks
Oh,
for it.
yeah, thank you. Speaking, you know what? I will say two more things.
About the spoiler kid?
Well, one of them's about Spoiler Kid, and one of them is about my
because
father.
there are some listeners that are fans of Spoiler Kid. So,
oh, are there?
Yeah, remember someone wrote in to him directly.
Oh, wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah, come on,
so,
he's got his own little listener niche on this show. Yeah.
Right. Well, they might remember that you congratulated him last year for his completion of high school at age 15. Very, very proud.
Yeah.
He worked very hard to do that. He like basically did a double course load for like years to like make sure that he's could graduate early. That was like a goal. Like he told me when he was like, I think he was like 12 or 13. He said, yeah, I'm going to do this plan. I'm going to graduate by 15. And you hear that and you think like, I think he can do it, but like, you don't know. Cause like when you plan something out a few years in advance, things happen, and he did it. It took a lot of sleepless nights from him and self-discipline because he was doing virtual school, but he did it. Now he's finished his first year of college, and I was very worried about that because doing in-campus college is different than doing like virtual school, and there's a lot of discipline. I was worried about the first semester being rough. I'm being careful how many details I give because like now that he's older, he's very into like internet anonymity and privacy. Yeah, like he's like he doesn't like have Discord anymore, and like he unplugs all of his mom. He unplugs all of his mom's like Alexa apps and stuff now. Like, yeah, he doesn't like he doesn't like his picture being online anymore. It's a whole thing, but I don't think I'm saying anything here that's out of bounds or that he'd be uncomfortable with. But yeah, completed his first year of college, and he's grown. He turned 17 in a month. So and he's currently traveling Europe with his mom and his sister for the summer. So awesome. Yeah. And my father, who you remember, because Stella's met my family.
Yes.
My dad will say, how's Moose doing? Yeah. How's Moose? So he retired after over 30 years in the fire department. A few weeks ago, he and Mindy, my stepmom, have sold their house and they're going to move to South Carolina.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you're invited, to visit in South Carolina. Yeah.
I don't think that they would appreciate you're inviting people for them.
I'm not inviting all of BTO's listeners. The house is not big enough, but I'm saying you and I, like,
Yeah, the
feel
house
like
is not
South
big enough.
Carolina is like a healthy distance,
That's pretty
from
good. Yeah.
Virginia. Yeah, like,
Yes.
yeah, we could roll up. We could have Sunday dinner with my parents,
That
and
sounds delightful. Yes. Yeah, Josh lives in the state that is the most concerning at the moment. And
yes,
I definitely want you to leave there. I know you have so many connections there, but I'm just like, man, you got to get out of there.
it would take a lot to get me to leave Florida just because of there is a lot of stuff going on here, but you know what? Like, I have relationships here. I have, there's people in my life here who I'm emotionally invested in. It wouldn't be impossible for me to, like, I'd say, like, now I'd be more willing to leave than I would have been 5 or 6 years ago, but it would have to be like the right opportunity. But for now, this is my home, and not to get too political, but I don't like our governor. I don't like some of the things that he's done,
Yeah.
but I can outlast him.
Yeah.
I can outlast these things. And, this is my home, and I'm not going to let him make it not my home, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah, and someone I was talking to also mentioned the fact that we still need, good people down there to, like, fight it, because if all the good people, like, flee, then it really is gonna be a dumpster fire. So, you just have to stay down there and fight the good fight, but my gosh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But Dad and Mindy, they're leaving because, they got grandkids nearby and they're ready for a new life. But it's going to be interesting because they're selling one of the homes that I grew up in. My dad got that house when I was in middle school, after he and my mom split up. And that I've lived in that house, that's like when I go, quote unquote, home to visit my, like, family. That's the house that we go to, and that's not going to be there. So that's like something that I've been emotionally preparing myself for. But I'm excited for my parents and their new beginning. It's going to be great.
Yeah, sounds great. Yeah, as for me, definitely 2 thumbs up for Across the Spider-Verse, loved it. I had a different feeling going in, or I guess leaving, than the first one, because I just think tonally this one's heavier and it's dealing with a lot. And I was very shocked by the ending. I did not know that that was going to happen. I won't spoil that for anyone, but I was just very shocked. And just overall, like, seeing these characters, seeing kind of like the betrayal, but then people working through what their thoughts are and starting to come around, kind of the kiss of death being given to multiple characters, and you're worried for them and like what's going to happen. But yeah, so good. And, fingers crossed that they break this interracial curse that Donovan says exists, that they're never going to pair, a black man and a white woman, or I guess a black person and a white person at all. Because yeah, definitely I am totally on board for some Miles and Gwen shipping. So I do recommend that. And then also I finished, or I guess I caught up on Station 19. I It is a connector to Grey's Anatomy. I feel like, Grey's Anatomy was huge, like, my senior year, first year of college, like, people were at the end of my dorm hallway, we would go into a room and watch Grey's Anatomy, and I feel like I watched maybe to season 5, and now it's, I don't know, 19 now. But this one I had seen just, like, this couple, Maya and Karina, and just, like, these extreme bursts of drama coming from this couple, and I'm like, "What is this?" So I decided to start from the beginning and watch it, and have had a lot of fun with it. I mean, some of these characters have their issues. My favorite character by far is Ben Warren, who is just a lovely, lovely man, just a good human being. But yeah, so I do recommend Station 19, but um, some people don't necessarily like, which is related to your dad, since your dad was a fire person.
Yeah.
That this is all
Yeah.
about the firefighters as well. So now that I've watched that, I kind of want to watch a show that my mom used to watch called Third Watch. Wow, I said watch like 4 times in one sentence. But well, that's harder to come by. So yeah, I recommend Station 19. That had given me joy. And then school is over. Kind of. I still have to go in on Monday. I have an evaluation with the principal who not once saw me working, but that's okay. We'll see what that's like. And then started a second job at Michael's, but it's very healthy and I enjoy it. And I'm staying out of any sort of drama, which seems it might unfold because someone was trying to tell me some dirt on somebody. And I was like, I said, I have no bad interactions with this person whatsoever. And so I hope that it would die there. So having fun there. And then we'll start my summer course on YA literature Monday, though she gave us week 0 work. I don't know why she would do that, but yeah, lots of good reads, but just a lot of work. So yeah, I think that's it. So without further ado, we just got to get into it because just like with all the events, I think that go down on this show, there's just like so many. And I'm going to be looking down a lot and maybe I can show stuff because I have it on my Kindle, but it is going to be book one if you got the recent purchase or the recent, I guess, published version of it, which contains War Drums and then Act One of War Games. And so we'll have Act Two in July and then finish up Act Three in August. War Drums, I have really covered throughout just BTO, just naturally coming along, where it would pop up in sequence. And so I'll talk about War Drums just to give you a rehash of kind of like last time on BTO. We'll go through that, but really focusing on War Games. There are 8 parts plus a prelude, and I will give a recap. I've got questions. We'll discuss it, move on. But before we start all of this, I do wonder because one of the reasons why I have you on is because you are a little more, well, I would say more than a little more. You're more well versed in sort of Batman anthology than I am, and in particular with this stuff going on. So, what's your history with War Games?
War Games was as I was returning to the Batman books after like some time away. Like I remember reading this from the stands and like so I had walked away from the Batman books, a little bit after No Man's Land, not for any reason and or anything. It's just like to date myself, I was in like 8th or ninth grade, and as a teenager, you kind of like drift in and out of like different interests and hobbies. And at that age and with that kind of income, it's harder to keep up with everything the way that you kind of can now with digital things and stuff like that. So I just wasn't reading the Batman books. Now we're in like 2004. War Games is about to start, and I kind of, started reading DC again, and I was hooked on like everything that they were doing, good and bad. Like, just it was, I had to see what was happening each month. And one of the things that drew me in was seeing that they were going to make Stephanie Robin. And I read that and I read Nightwing again for the first time in years. And actually, my first issue back to Nightwing was the issue where Blockbuster died and Nightwing and Tarantula had that unfortunate moment on the roof. That was
What an
quite an
understatement. Unfortunate moment on the
yeah,
roof.
unfortunate yeah, that was quite an issue to come back to. And I was not only like reading this, I was reading everything on like back then DC had, well, they do again now because of DC Universe Infinite, but like back then they had like a different message boards, and I would read all of like the message board posts. So I was kind of seeing like how fandom, at least that sect of fandom, because like, it's not always representative of what the all the readership is thinking, but how they were reacting to this stuff, like Stephanie being Robin, what was going on in Nightwing, and this lead up to War Games and what War Games was going to be. And as it was coming out, like I enjoyed each week having like a few chapters to read from my LCS. Like I didn't always enjoy the storyline, and as we get into it, we'll
Yeah.
talk about why, especially once we get to like act 2 and 3. Some unfortunate stuff there, but I kind of loved, instead of waiting like a month for like the next chapter of my story, I had this, and it was a good way to get back into the back books because I was reading, Robin and Nightwing, but this like showed me what was going on with Catwoman over in her title, and you kind of got a sense of everything else. And there's some big stuff that happened here, and also some big stuff that happened here that the book doesn't like make a big deal of. Like we'll talk about it when we get to the opening chapter, but like some important characters die, and the book kind of like glosses over that.
Yeah.
Um, I was an after school teacher at a school that shut down under very controversial circumstances called Corbridge Educational Academy. It was a charter school. And I would like take the books into like work before the kids would get in, and I would like read them. And I would let like the middle schoolers like, look at like the chapters of war games, and we were guessing because the buzz was somebody was going to die and we didn't know who it was. And in reading the message boards, there was like lots of theories and things like that. DC was still like not outright admitting that Tim was going to be Robin again, which, so we were like reading the solicitations, like, oh, they're trying to hide that Tim's going to be Robin again after this, and like, it, and this is big. We were guessing the fate of like all these characters. This isn't the best storyline, but it's an exciting time, and it was kind of my emergence back into the Bat books. And at this time, when I picked up the Bat books again, I didn't drop it again until the new 52. So like this was my return, and this return lasted until like sometime in 2011.
Okay.
So what
That's
is
a
that?
long haul.
Five years, yeah.
Well, this is 2004, so a bit longer. You
Oh
stopped in
yeah, yeah,
2011? Yeah, so like 7.
yeah. So this was
That's a
like
big push, yeah.
7 years, yeah.
Yeah. Wow, okay. Now, I could say this for the end. Maybe I'll say it here, and then if you want to, you can pick it up. But is this story too similar to No Man's Land too soon? Is something that I've been thinking as I've been reading it.
No, because No Man's Land, a big part of it was like this kind of post-apocalyptic thing where like, there's no power, there's no government infrastructure, there's no, like, and obviously like there's the territories. Like it's almost like Walking Dead, before the
Yeah.
Walking Dead.
Yeah.
In that sense, like there's that thing in one of the opening chapters in No Man's Land where I think like Penguin is like having people like bid on an apple, and they're bidding like all this money on it because they haven't had like fresh fruits. And um maybe the gang war stuff is similar to it, but it's kind of only one ingredient of No Man's Land, at least in my eyes. I think anytime you have like an all hands on deck Batman family crossover, there's gonna be some similarities to No Man's Land because it's Batman like mobilizing different allies to like divide and conquer different things. So maybe in that sense too, but I don't think the premise is that similar,
Okay.
and I don't think the execution is that similar.
Okay. So for me, this is really just my start of the history with it. I'm sitting down and reading it for the first time. I feel like I just know 2 story beats, and that's Stephanie Brown dies, and then Black Mask has like something to do with everything. And then I guess later on, someone was saying something about Leslie doing something unethical. So those are really the
Yeah.
only things that I know, which is I think is fine. I enjoy going into these storylines, not knowing anything, even though it's 20 years earlier, so I should have been spoiled. But yeah, so that's where I am. So you've got like the novice, and then you have the expert, which is a great little.
Oh, I mean, don't sell yourself short. I wouldn't say you're a novice, but
The
um
amateur.
I will say too that this storyline, the no, as far as I'm aware, no editor from DC has come out to say this, but like kind of the understanding that a lot of people on the message boards had, especially because of the way DC operated, was this storyline had a kind of a goal where like we had to have the mandate that Batman is going to be a fugitive from the law again, and
Again.
he's going to be the only like vigilante in Gotham.
Okay.
So this book is basically designed to like match up the status quo so that when Batman Begins comes out in 2005, people who pick up a Batman book aren't looking at like a
I
status
see.
quo of like 16 heroes in Gotham and stuff like
Okay.
that.
Okay, so tabula rasa in a sense. We're really clearing it up and starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
interesting.
and that could be wrong, but that's what everyone cynically thought on the message boards at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do know that there are a lot of It frequently happens where there is a tie-in somehow comic to film because they want one to boost the sales of the other.
And they'll do things like they're not as bad about it now, but like DC will do things when a movie's coming out to make the comics like match the movie or the TV show. Um, when Gotham came out, the TV show, did you notice that like that's when Scott Snyder made like Jim Gordon Batman, and he got a crew cut just like Ben McKenzie, and he shaved his mustache.
I didn't notice that. I mean, I am aware of both things being true. I did not know that they were true or did not recognize they were true at the same time.
Yeah, I mean nobody's come out and said that was the reason, but I'm like, huh, Jim Gordon has a
Suspicious.
Jim Gordon has a crew cut and no
Yeah.
mustache. And Gotham is a new
Hmm.
TV show coming out.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? Okay, well, let me do a previously seen on Batgirl Oracle. So, War Drums runs from Detective Comics 790 through 796, Robin Volume 4, issues 126 through 128, Batgirl number 53, and Solo number 10. It ran from March to September 2004, and this recap comes from DC Wikia. Batman grows darker, and he nearly kills a drug dealer on the day Jason Todd would have turned 18. He's forced to deal with the Hill Gang when they begin working with Mr. Freeze, and their leader, Capo Siegel, is killed. Leslie Tompkins reminds him of the sanctity of life when they're forced to choose between saving a pregnant woman or her unborn child, which is relevant today. Tarantula arrives in Gotham, tracking a cockroach monster called the Mugre. Batman has Orpheus take over the Hill Gang while they're weak and looking for direction. He helps Tarantula, that makes her leave his city. Poor Nightwing, because Batman did. See, Batman is a jerk. Look what he did. Orpheus is
Oh,
too.
Batman. We're gonna have a lot of Batman is the jerk counts like throughout this
Yes.
episode.
Yes. Orpheus is too inexperienced for his mission, so Batman recruits the ex assassin Onyx as his bodyguard. I kind of ship those two, but I don't know if anything will happen. They stage a fight in the Iceberg Lounge to give him credibility, solidifying both Orpheus and Onyx as major players in the Gotham Underground. Stephanie Brown struggles to continue her career as spoiler since Tim Drake quit. When she catches Tim getting kissed by Darla Akista, she gets upset and sews her own Robin costume. She sneaks into the Batcave where Batman agrees to train her despite Alfred's protests. The assassin Scarab carries out her mission to kill Robin by systematically murdering every prospect in Gotham. The first villain they go after, they meaning Batman and Robin, go after is Zaz on a murder spree in the subway. He captures Stephanie wearing an interesting Robin outfit with a collar that like molds to her face and nearly kills her, but she defeats him and escapes. Batman chastises her for using force that would have killed him, but explains this is why he's teaching her and doesn't fire her at that point. So, hypocrisy? I don't know. Tim learns of his replacement and tries to talk to Steph, but she continues avoiding him. Batman gains respect for Stephanie when she takes down Tiger Moth and they go after Scarab together. Scarab beats them both the first time, but Stephanie places a tracking device on her. And then in their next encounter, Batman wears an exoskeleton and orders Stephanie to stay in the bat plane. She jumps out to help him anyway, allowing Scarab to take her hostage and steal the plane. Batman fires her for disobeying orders after 71 days of being Robin. And the only one I haven't covered actually is Solo number 10. And in this story, because it's kind of an anthology book, Second Chances, it has Batgirl and Robin fighting Calamity. And we find out at the end that Batgirl actually set this up as a training scenario in order to train Robin to save her own life, which once we start reading War Games makes a lot of sense with what goes on there. And we also find out that Calamity and Cass were both trained by David Kane, which was shocking for me. I don't know if it's shocking for anyone else, but that is War Drums. So now we're going to get into Act One Outbreak. Do you have anything to say about War Drums before I move on?
I think that the solo book also came out like years later, if I
Oh, so
recall.
it didn't come out in 2004. It
What
was
issue
like
is
a
it?
revisionist kind of history.
Solo, what's the issue?
10.
Okay, Solo 10. I'm going to look that I
Yeah, you
because
can
I'm
Google
I'm
it.
having a vague recollection of this. Stand by, BTO. I'm seeing 2006.
Wow, interesting. Okay. So, wow. Yeah, you
But
kind
so
of.
yeah, second chances, yeah. But
Hmm,
Solo was kind of like an anthology thing. Like they would tell stories all over the timeline. So that would have been why you didn't come across it in
yeah.
your but they collected it in this trade paperback because it takes place during that time period.
Yeah. Is it kind of, would you say it's similar to What is that Spider-Man book that sort of tells tales that
Tangled Web.
yeah, is it kind of like that where it, like, pops in? Or when did we what was the issue? Was it Spectacular Spider-Man where we found out that Mary Jane is known all along?
Until well, I think you're thinking of Untold Tales of Spider-Man,
Okay. Yeah.
which they took that from Parallel Lives, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
um, yeah. Oh, Spider-Man. Um, I guess
Yes.
one thing I would have to ask you about this period is, and maybe you talked about this on your other episodes. What do you think about the end of Tim and Stephanie's relationship and how both of the characters handled it?
Um, I don't think I mean, I'm just trying to think, my first question is, like, did it end? Because it just seemed like I don't know. It wasn't, like, defined or anything, like, I would be confused. It'd be one of those Rachel
Ross
Ross
and Rachel.
situations of, like, were they on a break? What's going on here? I mean, it was just very the fact that she was avoiding him this entire time, and then he had
But
his own stuff
he
going on.
avoided her first.
Yes, and with the stuff that was yeah, that was going on with
Yeah.
him at school and things, yeah. No, I mean, it's not ideal. I mean, it feels like maybe they were forcing it a bit in order to, like, cut all ties
Oh,
that she
hey,
had in order to
a-
really make her an island.
absolutely.
Yeah.
At the time, I remember on message board, people were first of all, people were not happy with Tim because Tim does not he goes her for a long time after he quits being Robin. I forget how long it is, but I remember like it was an ungodly amount of time for somebody to like not talk to their girlfriend. And she was like suspicious about it, but understanding. Like they like, kiss at the beginning of that one issue when she's on the track. I could see the Damien, I think it was Damien Scott art now. Um, but then she's like suspicious and she sees him kissing Darla, but like Darla's actually kissing him. She just like misinterpreted it. So it's like a misunderstanding Three's Company thing, but then they never have a conversation about it. And like months go by. And even like a spoiler alert, even like throughout War Games, they never have a conversation about it. So Tim does not know why Stephanie is upset with him, and Stephanie does not know that Tim wasn't cheating on her. And I did not like that. And it kind of made me sad going into this. And it's like what you said. It wasn't like a very clear breakup because neither of them quite know what happened.
Yeah.
And there's a time skip in that first Stephanie as Robin issue where like you see like the seasons changing and months go by and it's these characters and the choices they make, it makes me sad.
Yes. Yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll be talking all about it.
And then Dick and Babs, that's a whole other thing that we'll get into in this because there's some
Yeah.
tension here.
I know, which is weird, but yeah, yeah, we will. Okay, so Act 1 is entitled Outbreak. So the prelude, which came from Batman, the 12 Cent Adventure number 1. It's entitled No Help. October 2004 is the cover date, I think, for all of these issues. Writer Devin Grayson, penciler Ramon Box, inkers Raul Fernandez and Rodney Ramos, colorist Steve Buccellato, and cover by Cameron Stewart, who is, of course, we're a fan of. So, Spoiler watches a gathering of crime bosses while Bruce Wayne attends a society gathering. Terrorists attack the gathering, and as the crime bosses continue to gather, Batman distracts the terrorists with a remote controlled Batmobile. Spoiler thinks about Batman, her past with him, and the original Robin. Alfred calls Nightwing, who is traveling with Tarantula, and Alfred's worried about him, quite rightly. Batman continues to battle the terrorists as more crime lords gather, so they're just two different places in the action. Spoiler wonders about the second Robin, about whom she knows little except something bad happened. The terrorists are defeated. Batman confronts the scientist for whom the event was held. He's a collaborator. His body dissolves away as he warns this is only the beginning. Spoiler finally contemplates Tim Drake, her immediate predecessor as Robin, his anger at her learning his secret identity. Catwoman arrives and she's surprised Spoiler is being oh my gosh. Catwoman arrives and she's surprised Spoiler is being allowed to cover this situation, and Spoiler admits she's been fired. Catwoman encourages Spoiler to call in Batman just when the gang meeting erupts in gunfire. Catwoman demands Spoiler call Batman as she flees. As Spoiler, because she doesn't want to get tagged for that, basically. As Spoiler watches her go, she's grateful no one remains to witness her failure. She decides Batman was right to fire her. She could be of no help to him while she burns a list that we don't know its significance until later on. So that is the prelude. Okay, so at one point, I think I just have a couple points. But Batman tells Steph that one day he won't be here anymore and he's going to need people to carry on the fight. And she says that that's the scariest thing he's ever said to her. And the meanest thing is that she couldn't cut it. So, what do you feel like we learn from both of these quotations directed towards Steph? That one day he won't be around, and then also she can't cut it.
I think it's kind of mean.
The
I mean,
second
it's
one?
yeah,
Yeah.
the second one. I mean, of course, Batman knows he's not going to be around forever. He's not chasing immortality like Vandal Savage or something.
Yeah.
So obviously he wants Gotham to be safe, and in good hands when he's gone. But it's, I mean, and you probably went over this in the fiery, when you covered War Drums more in depth. But there are so many cases of like Dick, Jason, and Tim like disobeying Batman's orders and Batman not firing them. And in fact, like that's how Tim became Robin
Right.
in the in that Scarecrow issue by Norm Brayfogle. Like Tim disobeys the orders and to save Batman, just like Stephanie did with the whole Scarab thing. And that's when Batman gives him that Robin costume. So it's uh it's not kind, and you can argue, oh, Batman's doing this to like motivate Stephanie, but as you can see here, it's not a really a motivator. It's like because it's motivating her in the wrong way, as we'll get into like later in the like everything that she's doing in this arc is to try and like impress Batman, and he could be more nurturing.
Yeah. Do you think Batman is talking about old age, or do you think that he feels like he's going to get cut down
Oh,
at one point?
I think the situation is vague enough that he's talking about old age. But you can argue it both ways. Like I interpret it as old age.
Yeah.
But although if he's talking about people to continue on in his steed, Stephanie's not like 60 years younger than him. So,
Right.
if he dies of old age, like Stephanie would, be like a senior citizen by then. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess by math wise, yeah, he's probably thinking that he could be cut down. Maybe he looked in the future and found out that in 4 years we're gonna get Batman RIP. So
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. And it is interesting because I feel like there may have been a point where, and there definitely was in those issues with Robin, that, or her as Robin, that he could have said that you might be able to cut it. But then at the very end, I think he's like, I'm sorry, you can't cut it, you're fired. So I feel like there was a point where he did praise her a couple times.
it feels like she was set up to fail.
Yeah, well,
Like,
I would agree with you there, but yes.
yeah, like reading the issues at the time and whatever. And because we never get Batman's thought process throughout like Stephanie's time as Robin, we don't like we're kind of meant to like interpret the relationship from Stephanie's point of view. Because as Batman is like training Tim, you can see Batman's point of view and his doubts, like, oh, what if he dies like Jason? And as he's training Jason, you kind of like see Batman's doubts and whatever there. And then, there's been so many stories about his relationship with Dick. So without any insight from Batman, it just makes him firing her like seem like a dick move.
Mm,
And I think the story would have been better if we would have seen some of Batman's thought process there to make it more sympathetic. But maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe because then it's not Stephanie's story anymore.
yeah. It's more Batman.
And we're kind of meant to be guessing about like what Batman's intentions are with Stephanie until I won't say what it is, but like at the end of War Games, there's a conversation with Batman and Stephanie that gives you some insight into like why he made her Robin and how he views all that.
Okay.
But I don't think that conversation was enough. And I think that we needed more, insight from Batman into the, and also there's been so many times when Tim and Bruce told Stephanie to quit and she wouldn't quit. So when Batman says, I don't want you out there as Robin or spoiler again when he fires her, I don't know what he thought was going to happen. Of course, she's going to like,
Yeah.
now, and I'll be honest, when I read this issue from the stands, like the 12-cent adventure, I was surprised to see her in her spoiler costume because I thought she was just going to keep on being Robin again to defy him. Because
Oh yeah, just an unauthorized version. Yeah.
yeah, I was like, because that's always her thing. Like, she's like, no, I'm going to go out anyway. And I'm like, oh, she went back to spoiler. That surprised me. But
Well, I feel like doesn't that show her respect for the cowl for
yeah,
that particular one?
I think she did it out of respect and to not like anger Batman. But going back to that point too, like if Batman knows she's going to go out there anyway, why doesn't he? It's better to have her under his wing,
Yeah.
than to like tell her don't go out there again, knowing she's going to do it anyway. I think that there's just a lot of bad decisions from Batman here, and
Yeah.
and some of it is bad writing because you have a lot of writers and cooks in the kitchen
Yep.
and they can't kind of the big failure of war games and war drums is they didn't do a good enough job of showing Batman's intentions and motivations with Stephanie.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, because that seems like a flaw of Batman's that we're not used to. And of course, I call out any bad thing about Batman, but Batman thinks ahead. So the fact that he wouldn't have thought ahead that this is what Steph would do, because I'm just thinking about, I'm pretty sure it was Contagion, where he had Tim basically like following Huntress around.
Yeah.
So this would be something similar. Like he could have asked Catwoman if anyone to
And
follow Steph around or something like that, knowing that she would do that. So the fact that he didn't, or it's not written that way, is interesting. That's very anti-Batman, I would say.
and the same thing in No Man's Land when he fires Helena as Batgirl. There's a scene with him and Dick afterwards where he
Right.
says, she's going to go out on her own. And he
Yeah.
says, I know. And then Dick says, do you have a plan? And he says, yes. And then you see Dick is keeping tabs on Helena when she's like in that one camp with Pettit's men,
Mm,
you
yeah.
know, like Batman kind of like always had eyes on her. So this was not well thought out from Batman or,
Yeah.
and I hate to attack creators, but like or the writers.
Yeah. 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 Sometimes you certainly have to call it. So in this particular issue, we go through the history of the Robins, but Stephanie doesn't know the secret identities of Dick or Jason, nor does she know much about Jason's story. Does this surprise you at all that Batman is very hands off? And we find out later on, which we'll talk about, that she doesn't know a key part of Batman's identity either, which is what causes all of this. But I mean, are you surprised that he doesn't let her in on it? Because she knows where the Batcave is?
She knows how to get to the Batcave through like an like underground entrance. Now, if Stephanie wasn't like a teenage girl, if she was someone like, Dinah Lance or Selena Kyle, she would put the extra steps together. Okay, this is where the Batcave is. Let me like reverse engineer these coordinates and figure out it was under Wayne Manor. Tim Drake is Robin. Okay, Tim Drake once lived in Bruce Wayne's home for a time when his dad was hospitalized. Like, and Stephanie has also seen Alfred
Yeah.
and like knows Alfred by name. Now, it's not like in the year 2004, like there's not a Wikipedia that says like, Alfred is Bruce Wayne's butler, but Stephanie has all the pieces to put the identity together, but she's not a detective
Yeah.
the way that like, Tim is or whatever.
Mm.
And at the same time, I don't think that like it's her gold. I think if she tried to, she would have figured it out. And spoiler alert, at one point she does figure it out. We never see how, but like when she comes back after War Games, she knows who Batman is. And I don't consider that an error because like you can just kind of work out that, oh, with everything that's happened, she was able to like put the pieces together because she knew enough of it. It is weird that, yes, and as Catwoman points out later in the issue, it is weird that Batman had a Robin that he kind of only gave half of his like
Right.
intel to.
Yeah.
At the same time, all of this information about the Robins, it's there because in addition to like kind of, showing Stephanie's point of view, the point of these 12-cent adventure books, because there was a Superman one that was similar at the time, and then there was also like I think like another 10-cent adventure or something around the time of Bruce Wayne murder. They're cheap, and they're meant, the reason why that they have this price point is they're meant to get people that aren't reading the books or have that walked away from the books to pick it up. So if you're a new reader or something, like through Stephanie, we're learning the history of the Bat family. And through Stephanie, we're learning what's been going on the last few months. Like, oh, she was Robin and she was fired. And you even see like little glimpses into what's going on with everyone else in the Bat family. You see Tim out with Darla. You see Nightwing and Tarantula, like kind of, on the run fighting bad guys. So this is kind of meant to be like a Batman 101 for readers that have been away for a while, as well as getting them hooked with the whole War Games thing. So that's why there's the
Yeah.
Robin recap, and I think that's a cool thing that we don't see a lot of now because comic distribution is so different now with like digital and like these services like DC Universe Infinite or Marvel Unlimited and Comixology. But yeah, it's weird that Stephanie doesn't know, to answer your question.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree. And then I have a later question, but it's really all in that Catwoman stuff. My other two questions we find out. So I'll just say that I did wonder how Thor found out about the meeting because Catwoman wondered. And, did she send the letters? That was my question. And why is it this particular gang blow up and massacre that makes Stephanie so despondent? But those are answered. So we'll get back to that. Do you have any other thoughts on this particular prelude?
Yeah, just a few. One was that your questions that are answered. I never questioned any of that when I was reading this in like
Okay.
2004. I was 18 turning 19. I think I was still 18 when this issue came out if I looked at the cover of the publication date, which is always early in the cover date, because I just assumed, because she tells Callan that she got wind of it, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's the thing that vigilantes do. And she's upset at the end, and I'm like, oh, she's upset because something happened under her nose. Like, this book does a good job of only giving you some of the information, but it benefits from a reread when you get all of the information later on in the Catwoman issue. So that was a nice touch. During the shootout, Lou Moxon is killed, and that's like kind of a big deal, but the book glosses over it. Lou Moxon was the guy, and it at this point it had been retconned since then, but Lou Moxon was the guy that hired Joe Chill to kill Thomas and Martha Wayne. That was revealed in the Golden Age slash Silver Age. It was kind of like that nebulous period between the Silver Age and Golden Age. After Zero Hour, they said that Joe Chill hadn't killed the Waynes. Like, they liked the idea of it being an unidentified killer. So Lou Moxon was just kind of like another Gotham mob boss, but one that had been around for a long time. He hadn't been in a lot of stories, but just like there's a legacy there. So, he dies. Hellhound dies. And at one point in the 90s, he was kind of like Selina's arch nemesis, like her dark mirror. Like, and he knew her identity because Selina had like kind of like a secret identity. And like, they fight in the legacy storyline. And she's like there when he dies. And like, like on the roof, and she kind of has no reaction. There's been other hellhounds since then, so like, you know now, and I say that they kind of tried to make her Catwoman's arch nemesis. Obviously it didn't take, like, so.
Yeah.
And in Silver Monkey, he was in some issues. He was like kind of a minor villain in the 90s for a bit. So, and there's other like no name people that died too. I say no name, like they had names, but like they were in like a few appearances in like the 90s and 2000s books. So um there are some stakes in this, and I'm surprised that they didn't make as big of a deal out of this. And one of my notes is that you see Tim and Darla like together on like a date, and Tim is kind of like almost looking passive. And it's interesting because in that issue of Robin, she asks him out again and he like says yes. And because Stephanie's not answering his call, so I guess like is Tim just dating her now because he needs something to do then that he's not Robin? Like how invested is he in this relationship? It's really weird and the books never really define it before the relationship changes in war games based on things that happen at the school that we'll get to soon.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And yeah, those are my notes on the 12-cent adventure.
Okay, I appreciate it. All the insight. I love it. So we'll move on to part one, Detective Comics number 797, Flashpoint. Writer Anderson Gabrick, penciler Pete Woods, inker Nathan Massengill, and colorist Jason Wright. Word of the gunfight is starting to spread. The police and news media are investigating as Batman arrives. He checks out the scene with Batgirl's help and reports the information to Oracle. He determines the survivors: Scarface, Orpheus, Penguin, Mr. Fun, Onyx, Deadshot, Zeiss, and Escobedo's bodyguard, who turned up at Leslie Tompkins' clinic in bad shape. Oracle and Batman review the night's events at the clock tower. Meanwhile, retaliation for the shootout starts to ramp up. Batgirl fights in Chinatown to try and stop the violence. Batman tries to talk to Escobedo, but he blames Batman, and it turns into a fight, which is interrupted by an attack by the Odessa mob. Orpheus goes to the Iceberg Lounge, where he meets with Penguin, who denies starting the war. The violence continues to spread, erupting on the hill. Batman, Orpheus, and Batgirl struggle without success to quell the tide, but it spreads too far, too fast for them to act quick enough. Okay. Why I just have two questions. So, if you have any questions, but why is Batman surprised that the gang members, once that was like exploding and that little township, I guess we could call it, is there's an explosion, it's burning. Why is he surprised that the gang members ran and didn't help the people in the building? Do you recall this section? He calls them
Yeah,
cowards. He's like rescuing
I
people. I'm like, why are you surprised?
I don't think he's surprised as much as he is like angered. He's not like they're not helping people. He's like they're not helping. It's like a
Okay.
frustration. At least
Yeah.
that's how I read it.
Okay.
It is kind of weird the way that it's framed. I will agree, and like yeah,
Because I know that there are some. Well, I'm thinking even of like the Batgirls title, where we have that group that looks like the mutants, where they are protective of the place that they're living. So I don't know if he thought that this group was also protective of their little hamlet, and then they ran off. But the other point, which actually carries through this act, the significance of Batman being seen and reported
yep.
on. Yeah. So thoughts on this?
This is a weird thing, and this was the talk on the message boards at the time too. Is that after Zero Hour,
Mm-hmm.
in the '94, there was kind of this like thing where they said Batman has is an urban legend. He's never been seen in public. He's never been caught on camera. Obviously, there's some instances after Zero Hour that slip through the cracks where like Batman is on TV and stuff like that, but it's something that people criticize because like it works if you just have like Detective Comics, Batman, Nightwing, Robin, like those issues. But then you have stuff uh like Batman in the JLA and like all of these other books that he was appearing in where he's doing stuff in public. It was people thought it was a stupid retcon, and then it raises questions about pre-Zero Hour books like Justice League International where like Batman was appearing on camera and stuff like that. And you'd have other books like Young Justice where like the team would be on camera and Robin would be like in this, off to the side, like watching from the shadows, and Batman would be like, I know you want to be down there with them, but you can't.
Yeah.
And then, like just whatever Nightwing was always doing with the Titans, which was usually like pretty public. People did not like this retcon, and one of the things that this storyline did was kind of get rid of that aspect of the Batman. But let's see, if Zero Hour is like '94, this is 2004, so yeah, 10 years.
Do you consider it a retcon, or do you think it's just a change? Like this
Oh, it's
situation is so bad that Batman just needs to be out at all times, and he's going to get caught by the media now.
But when I say retcon, I mean retcon that he's never been seen on camera before
Oh,
this. When they
okay.
when
I
they
see.
established that, yeah, yeah. So this is one of the war game changes that I was okay with. That we're doing away with this like Batman's never been seen on film thing because that
Yeah.
was a very stupid. I'm very conscious of how I criticize things on podcasts now because like I don't want to be like that angry guy from like the 2000s that like did that, but like I'm more kind. Creators are people too. Don't be mean to them, Josh.
Yes.
But
Well, yes, I've also changed in that way. Yes.
yeah, oh man, we should like next time we're all together, we should listen to like a sample episode of like
I'll be
something that we
horrified.
did from like 10, 15 years ago and
What-
see if we can see how much we cringe at our like old thoughts. Like,
I have some making up to do because I do want to have Gail Simone on my show to talk about her run on Birds of Prey, and I will honestly apologize to her. So, I mean that's kind of like I think the most egregious, just like disrespect I would say that I did. So, and now knowing what she went through, now I even have even
yeah,
more remorse. So, yeah, that's the big one for me is yeah apologizing to Gail Simone.
yeah, and then we'll talk about this more when we get to Nightwing. But like Devin Grayson as a female writer, writing
Yeah,
this type. I mean, the stuff that they were saying about her on the message boards in 2004 was very, very horrible. Comics are, I think, a much better place for female creators now, but as bad as things are now, it was a lot worse in 2004. And I don't think she was given the support that she should have had.
yeah.
And I think there was a lot of people that had very horrible ideas about it. And I got caught up in 2004 in some of that message board stuff. And I now recognize it for what it was. I'm like, oh, this was misogyny that
Yeah.
these people were doing. And, um, but anyway,
It's all about growth.
this is all back to Batman on camera. So go ahead with
Yeah,
your
yeah,
next
no.
question.
Do you think it's fitting then that it's this story that we see Batman on camera?
I think it could have been any story.
Okay.
I don't think that it needs to be this momentous like big reveal or something
Mm-hmm.
like that. I do like, and we'll get to it, that it was to try and save a life. If Batman's going to be caught on film,
Yeah.
that would be the reason to do it.
Yeah, for sure. I think those were the only points that I had on this one. Do you have any other thoughts on part one?
The only one I did was I have a note that says Oracle shade because like Oracle throws some shade at Batman over like, well, let's see, you fired Robin, so
I know their numbers are down, which is interesting. Huntress, and I don't know if it's this issue, but she does say when he's calling in everyone, she's like, I'm so sorry, Huntress and Dinah are off doing something. And you'd think that worst case scenario, he would bring Spoiler back in or like look for other people. But I mean, even in the terms of like Birds of Prey, you do have, and maybe they just weren't communicating with Gail Simone at the time, but
oh,
you have those two guys, Savant. Like you have other potential like that he could have pulled in. So I don't know what exactly is going on.
I'm
Is
just remembering how this storyline ends for Barbara and the Birds of Prey, but we'll get to that in a heck.
uh-oh.
Oh
Uh-oh.
no, no, it's okay, don't worry.
Okay.
Like
Because that's all like new for me as well. Like I'm past where I had read up to. So now it's like every issue is new for me.
oh, this
Uh
is gonna be interesting.
uh-oh. Okay. Well, are you gonna be there to comfort me through the videos
Oh,
again?
absolutely. I wouldn't have it any other.
Go there. Okay. So part two, Batman Legends of the Dark Knight, number 182, Behind Enemy Lines. Writer AJ Lieberman, pens for Brad Walker, inker Troy Nixie, colors Javier Rodriguez. Batgirl, Catwoman, and Batman try to fight the violence. An overwhelmed Oracle struggles to direct them in a city engulfed in violence. Batgirl tries to catch up with the Russians, but it turns into an ambush, and before she can do more, she's sent to the West Side. Story. Orpheus struggles Orpheus struggles to keep his gang out of the fight as their turf is attacked. Batman meets with him and tells Orpheus to make alliances and take over some more of the other gangs and try to pull them out of the fighting. Meanwhile, a Navy freighter close to the shores of Gotham gets a distress call. Batman disguises as Matches Malone, which we'll talk about, and arranges a meet between Orpheus and the Yakuza. The distressed call that I just talked about is a trap, and Pirate sees the vessel. Orpheus meets with the Yakuza and they postpone the decision for an hour. When the time comes, Orpheus is double crossed by the Yakuza and Onyx aids Orpheus. However, Onyx is wounded but still able to fight, while Orpheus follows the Yakuza leader as the man tries to escape. And then at the docks, the freighter is brought into port, and the whole merchandise from the ship is now controlled by Penguin, which I was getting some No Man's Land vibes here. Who was in charge of weapon selling in the cathedral in No Man's Land?
I don't remember.
Okay. I felt
I
like it was
I know
either
I
Two
know
Face or Penguin, but
I know. Yeah, I think Penguin was selling weapons, but like Two Face might have been as well at one
okay,
point.
yeah.
Like there was like there was territorial fights over weapons, but I think Penguin had like a smuggling operation to the outside, and that's how they were getting weapons.
Gotcha. I do have a couple like visual things. But once I find it. So first of all, Batgirl has a motorcycle briefly because it does get destroyed and some smoke grenades. I don't often see her with weapon or accoutrement in this way. Any thoughts on this? That this is the first time we've seen her, I feel like, and not in her own book, have this kind of tech. What do you think?
I think that's cool. I don't have much thoughts on this. Like, yay, Cass, she can drive a motorcycle.
Okay.
I'm sure David Kane, like, in order to make her as effective as possible, like, taught her basic, like, skills for how to ride a bike.
So she can ride a bike, but she can't read.
I mean, he didn't want her to.
Donovan's gonna hate me.
He didn't want her to talk. He just wanted her to like, like
Do everything
be an
else.
effective killing machine.
Yes.
But if she
Oh,
can get true love's kiss before the sun sets on the third day,
and what will happen?
well, debatable if she'll get her voice back. That's kind of like something that fans assume.
Yeah.
But she will remain Batgirl permanently.
Whoa.
Yeah,
Permanently.
permanently. But if she doesn't, then she'll turn back into a Cassandra Cain, and she'll have to live in Ursula's garden.
Okay. So I do say, doesn't Oracle look a bit rough in this image?
That's one of my notes that I had was like the Oracle Overwhelm splash page. I loved that. I, I love that. That was a good way of like kind of conveying, just how chaotic Gotham was in this whole War Games thing. And
Yeah, absolutely.
mhm.
Yeah, I have a question in a later issue about how well she's being used, so we'll get to that. What are your thoughts on Batman's plan to have Orpheus take over as many gangs as possible and leader, and therefore Batman being leader? Do you feel like it's inevitable that someone in that position, in Orpheus' position, either will, no. Is it inevitable that someone will either find out because Orpheus isn't dirty, or Orpheus would inevitably be corrupted by this position? As you know, because cops undercover, as far as I've seen on media, sometimes they got to dabble into things and cross lines and stuff. So yeah, thoughts on his plan here?
I think it's one of those things where you don't have time to think about it because like the building is on fire, like you got to get everyone out as soon as possible. You can think about the logistics later, like Gotham is crumbling. Like, can Orpheus keep this up? It doesn't matter because like this is the best way to do it. You can do damage control later, and it kind of goes to what the original. I mean, a little bit of a spoiler alert, but like what we find out the original plan was about uniting everybody under one
Right.
leader.
Yeah.
So this at least kind of salvages like that part of the plan. And Orpheus is the best bet to do that because he is Batman's man on the inside,
Mm-hmm.
for better or worse. So
Yeah.
that's it's the best strategy to go with. Does it have its challenges? Absolutely, but it's what they got.
How many people do you think reading at the time have read, or what is it, Orpheus Rising?
Orpheus Rising.
Yeah.
I don't know that a lot of people did, but I could be wrong.
Because I liked that, and I think it gives insight into the character. But I just wonder, like, if people are coming in, are they like, "Who's this Orpheus guy?" And how does Batman know him?
Yeah, we're gonna have a lot to say about Orpheus in
Oh
Acts 2.
my! Oh no! I do like Orpheus. Oh
We're
no.
I just said we're gonna have a lot to say
I
about him.
know, but when you say it like that, it makes me
That can mean,
worried.
and just the way he's utilized in this
Okay.
story.
Okay. I mean,
I'm not saying he's okay either. I'm not saying anything one way or another, one way or another. But
I've got to
like,
worry about so many parts. There's something going on with Birds of Prey. There's something going on with Orpheus. It's like no one's gonna come out okay. I was just
well,
talking to
don't
someone
worry.
this morning, and she was saying I don't remember it, and I said, well, maybe it was so traumatic he buried it low, because maybe that's true. It was traumatic. Oh no.
Well, don't worry. Stephanie will be okay. She's gonna come out of this like better than ever.
2009. Yes.
Batman's gonna say you're not only Robin, you are Batman now, and like,
Oh,
and
what
and
a crock.
and
Yeah.
and Prince Eric will kiss Cassandra, and they'll
My
live
gosh.
happily
With
ever
or
after.
without consent, because there's a lot of kissing going on.
You know what? A kiss is just a kiss.
A
I
kiss
don't
is
know.
just a kiss. Dude, you're gonna get canceled. Okay. Yeah, I don't know.
No,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to be flippant with that.
Yeah.
Uh,
We yes.
Cassandra cannot be kissed without consent. If Chris Eric
Oh,
tried to kiss Cassandra and she didn't want it, he would be dead before his lips made contact with her.
that's probably true. Except
Sha
for
la 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 la.
except for
Don't
Black
be
Wind, I think he
scared.
did kiss her without consent in her own title.
Oh,
And I can't she kissed Superboy, I remember, but Black Wind. Anyways, yeah, no, this is an interesting plan. Yes, we do know a bit more. It's like it's that Catwoman issue, which that's when everything is revealed. So I'm just kind of like dancing around it right
yeah.
now. But Orpheus isn't man, it just seems like he's a tool. And I wonder like how much does Batman like treat him with respect? But then I do take like a step back and I think, well, Batman is trusting him to do all of this. He is saying, take over more gangs. He does want him protected and gets Onyx. So while I think he's sort of the means to the end, I think that he Batman cares about him a little bit. But sometimes I'm like, oh, Batman, are you just using this guy and not caring too much about him?
He's also one of the, like, we're in like a pre-Duke Thomas era. Like, this is one
Oh
of the
yeah.
first African American like Gotham heroes. I don't think he's the first one, and I'm having like a brain fart. I'll probably think of whoever the first one was before then. But the way that, like, he is treated in the Bat books at times, both by the readers and by the writers and by and the characters in the books themselves, it's not always the best. And that's the one thing that we'll probably reflect on as this goes on, is like how Orpheus is utilized versus a character like
Yeah.
Stephanie or Dick or Cassandra.
Yeah, for sure. I was happy that Onyx asked about Orpheus's gun, since I was also wondering why he was just shooting so freely. But he does say that they're rubber bullets, and I was surprised that Onyx got hit just because she seems very capable. But she does get nailed and then is brought to Leslie's clinic. So those are the points that I had on that issue. Do you have any other thoughts on part two?
Nope.
Okay, so moving on to part three, which is Nightwing 96, A Sort of Homecoming. Okay, writer Devin Grayson, penciler Mike Lilly, inker Andy Owens, colorist Gregory Wright. Batman fights the gangs in Chinatown when he's joined by the long absent Nightwing. Batman immediately realizes something is bothering him, but Nightwing keeps the reason a secret. Batman assigns him to interrogate a man at the Thompson Clinic. Tarantula has followed Nightwing to Gotham. Oh my gosh. And she quickly takes over the Latino Unified Gang. At the clinic, Leslie tells Nightwing Escobedo's guard is unable to talk, but Onyx is there as well. She tells him about what happened at the meeting. Jack Drake talks with Tim about what's happening, making sure he doesn't plan on becoming Robin again. Oracle notices strange activities at Burnley and reports to Batman, who in turn checks with Nightwing and assigns him to find out what Tarantula is up to. When he arrives, she attacks him, but it's an act to impress her new gang. She tells him she's taken control to keep them out of the fight. Batman decides that is acceptable and tells Oracle and Nightwing to behave while Tarantula aids in Gotham. Mm. Okay. Yeah, I have many questions and points on this one. Okay.
Oh man.
Yeah. So first of all, I will say it's good on Batman to recognize that something is wrong with Nightwing because sometimes I think Batman is oblivious to anything but the mission. But do you think that was the time for Dick to talk to him, or is it better that he just stays silent for the moment? And do you know if Dick ever talks to Batman about what happened?
I think he should have talked to him because otherwise Dick is carrying this, and in carrying this, it affects his. He's less effective. He's, oh, I see
Yeah.
the artwork. Um, it's how like once you get something off your shoulders, like you feel that weight lifted from you.
Totally. Yeah.
So I think that it would have helped, but that's not where the story was at, obviously. Do they ever talk? Yes, it takes a long time. Like Infinite Crisis, a long time.
Yikes. Okay. Have you ever
Yeah,
read Invincible?
some of it.
Okay. So,
You
okay.
know who works for the company that makes Invincible now?
Image? They work for Image?
The company, so Image publishes it, but like, oh, what's the Skybound, the company
Oh,
that
okay. Yeah.
like owns it and Walking Dead. An old friend of ours, who showed you a gazebo, Joe McCabe.
Oh, was he with us when we saw the gazebo? That's what I was trying to connect.
Yeah, he took us there. Remember, because like our tour wouldn't let us go through because of like
Oh, it was him.
so Joe walked
Oh,
us over there and stuff.
yes.
Yeah,
He's a
yeah.
good
So Joe,
man. He was a very kind man that for our birthdays for sure. Yes. Shout out
yeah,
to
yeah.
him.
So
Yes.
he works for Skybound
Oh, good
now.
for him. I know that upheaval, he was certainly
Yeah,
on the receiving end of that. So, yeah.
yeah, yeah. For the listeners, Joe was the man that hired me for DC Universe, the app, and he was the victim of the AT&T layoffs during the pandemic.
Yeah.
But he is at Skybound now, so
Yeah. Might be a
hooray for
healthier environment.
hooray
Yeah.
for Joe. But circling back, you asked about Invincible. Go ahead.
Yeah. I think it might not matter. Well, Invincible was raped, but that's really dealt with well. And he talks well, there's just a lot of trauma involved. It's hard to talk to Adam Eve about it, and his father, but he ends up doing it. But it's just like we haven't seen that at all here. So that's, agree or disagree with the rape happening. Obviously, I don't want any rape to happen, but if you're deciding to do that story, point, then I am also very interested in the repercussions after that and how you're dealing with that. And here, I would say in this issue, it doesn't seem like he was assaulted at all with like how he's talking about Tarantula, kind of the flippant way of it, which, I'll get
Oh, my
into.
stalker.
Yes, exact. No, that is the exact line. I'm like, what's going on here? And I can take a step back and be like, everyone with trauma deals with something differently. But I feel like I just don't think that it's written well. I don't know that
Um,
it's
I guess I'll re-answer your question then, because when you said, "Does Dick ever talk about it?" I thought you were talking about Blockbuster. Does he ever talk about the rape? No, he does not.
okay. Okay. So
Yeah,
that
the
never comes
story,
back.
like this, it's it might be like kind of like implied, but he never talks about it with like the story treats it as like the reason why Dick is traumatized is because he let Blockbuster die and he broke his vow. And that's the guilt that he's going to carry with him for the next few years
Okay.
until like he finally tells Bruce about it during like an Infinite Crisis tie-in issue in Nightwing, and Bruce is like, "I already knew, and like you should stop feeling sorry for yourself." And weirdly enough, like Cassandra Kane and Tim both know without like Dick telling them. There's like an issue um in like Robin or Batgirl in a few months where like somebody's pretending to be Blockbuster, and Tim and Cassandra are like, I guess Dick is left off the hook, and then they have an uncomfortable moment. They're like, oh yeah, Dick doesn't know that we know. So it's like,
Interesting.
what's going on here? But
Yeah, those are kind of big things to not leave in off panel land.
oh, off panel land is a fun old time. um
Well, talking about
yeah,
that, then, do you feel like that is out of character? The fact that he says that Blockbuster's death has to remain a secret for now.
I think he feels so guilty about it that like yeah, he wants it to remain a secret because he is so afraid of Batman's like disappointment in him, and
Yeah.
like and also that he like broke the vow, failed the mission. And it's interesting too because there's been cases where like other characters in the Batman family have like killed, and it hasn't been like the same thing. Dick killed Joker in that one
Yep.
storyline.
Yep.
Last
Joker
laughed and
last laugh.
Joker was
Yeah.
brought back. Tim thought he killed one of his villains recently in the Bill Willingham run, and it was treated a lot differently than this. That villain turned out to be alive. I think it was Johnny Warlock.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Yeah.
that's how long this has been. Like we're next year. It's going to be 20 years since these books have come out. God Almighty, I feel old. um, so yeah, the Nightwing books were an interesting experience at the time. The message boards were a very toxic place, as I alluded to. Tarantula was always referred to as Mary Sue by everyone on the message board, and that was my first like exposure to that word, which now is overused so much, but it was misused then because the idea of a Mary Sue is like an author self insert character. And Donovan and I had an interview with Devin Grayson years ago. It's on the Batman Universe website. And she said that, like, it's a very sexist idea that if a female writer introduces a female character, everyone assumes that that character is a self insert.
Hmm.
Like, nobody accused Chuck Dixon of inserting himself into Nightwing. Nobody accuses, like, male writers of this same thing. And she says, like, Catalina, Tarantula, was sleeping with Dick Grayson. So people were like, oh, she wrote a character that's like herself that's sleeping with Dick Grayson. She says, I didn't want to sleep with Dick Grayson. I wanted to be Dick Grayson. Um, there was a lot of homophobia, on the boards too, because Devin Grayson like made a comment about like, Dick's sexuality in like an interview once. So people were like, oh, she's gonna make him gay. And they were like just some very bad reactions to that. So the rape was something that is not really dealt with. And Devin Grayson has since, like, in that interview with Donna and I, she said that she regretted the way that it was written and the way that she presented it at the time. And there was an interview where she said it wasn't rape, but it wasn't consensual either, which she said that she regretted ever saying that. But that had a lot of bad feelings with fans at the time because in their eyes, and I'm not defending the misogynistic fans. I'm just explaining what the environment was at the time. But they're seeing Nightwing getting raped, and then they're seeing him follow his rapist around like a puppy dog for the next few months in the books. And right before War Games, they almost got married. And I joke with Stella before the podcast that like, man, if War Games hadn't happened, like that shootout, Dick and Catalina would have been married. It wasn't handled the best, and the hatred for Tarantula was a lot. And anytime Tarantula did something positive in the books like this, they're like, oh, they're trying to force her on us, they're trying to make it a hero. It was not a good time in Nightwing fandom, not just because of what was going on with the title, but because of the fans themselves. The fans failed the character, and they failed, DC. They failed the writer. There was misogyny towards Devin Grayson that was uncalled for. And her run had some editorial interference. Should she have had Nightwing get raped? No. Was the aftermath handled badly? Absolutely. However, she did not deserve what she got. And calling Tarantula a Mary Sue is a sexist term. And now I wince every time I see everyone call someone a Mary Sue, like,
Yeah.
oh, Ray's a Mary
Ray.
Sue.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
first of all, Mary Sue, like, Ray, like, J.J. Abrams, like, directed those movies. So are you saying that he wants to be Ray? Like, come on. Okay. That's a whole other thing. Back to you, Stella, before I go on like a half-hour rant.
No, I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you for giving us that insight. Um, how much does Batman know about this love triangle for him to get between Dick, Babs, and Catalina to give explicit instructions about it?
So the note that I have on my thing on this. It actually quotes you. Do you remember
It quotes
when I
me.
went? It
Okay.
quotes you because I'll never forget this. Do you remember when I came to Virginia for our birthdays in 2015 and we watched Jessica Jones? And there's a
Yes.
scene with the lawyer. The lawyer's in like a love triangle, and like the lover like
Oh.
walks into the room with her and the ex. Do you remember what you said? You said, "Akko Taco, Akko Taco."
Man, yeah,
So I,
that's like some gay panic too. That's like, oh my gosh, what's happening? This is not
Ak,
good. She's caught. Yeah,
Ak,
yeah.
well, it was because like the lawyer like left her spouse for like her lover or something, and like they were
Yeah.
all three of them were in the same room. So I don't think it was gay panic. I
Taco,
think it was you
taco.
just like, oh no, like this is an awkward situation. So I put in my notes just Akko Taco, like Batman, like without warning, patching Oracle in and being like, all right, three of you are gonna work together. I don't want any. I have to imagine that like he knew that Dick and Babs were in a relationship, and he knows now that they're not in a relationship, and he knows that like Tarantula is following Nightwing around. So I don't think he knows explicitly how things went down, but he's smart enough to know that like there might be some romantic drama here, but
Yeah.
at the same time people are dying, so he's just going to be blunt. Like he doesn't have time to be like, hey, Barbara, before I bring you into this three-way call, just want to give you a heads up, something. He's just ripping, I'd say ripping the band-aid off, but this is like ripping like a whole like skin graft off. Like
Yeah.
it's
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
it's awkward, but I could kind of justify Batman in this situation because legitimately people are dying and he has to be to the point.
Do you equate it to Babs Huntress Dick?
In some ways, there's some parallels because, like, in that triangle, Huntress was like portrayed as like the wild card, the like unpredictable one, and the one that Batman didn't approve of. And Catalina kind of like serves that role a little bit here.
Mm.
Um, Difference is like Catalina, I think, was like more villainous than Helena ever was, to the point where like she was hired by Blockbuster to like kill Oracle, and that's what like preempted the whole breakup in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Um, I thought it was, I always like to give Babs the benefit of the doubt. Like, is she that petty, that cat, that she can't recognize that we're in a dire situation, so she's gonna have some drama. So I always feel bad that like she's brought in and like just in case you were thinking about being dramatic, don't be dramatic. But whatever. Does it make sense for Dick to give Tarantula another chance? He says, I kind of owe her this, a chance to prove herself to get back on the right path.
I could see why Dick is saying that. First of all, like yes, we are the right the book, the title, it kind of ignores that the rape happened
Yeah.
because like the book doesn't view it as a rape, which like I said, the writer has apologized for multiple times. But even though Catalina was the one that pulled the trigger, Dick, the way
He's
that he operates, the way he feels responsible for
right,
that.
right.
He
Yeah.
feels like he's going to feel like it's his fault. It's that Peter Parker way about him. So that's why he feels like he needs to give her another chance and her redemption. So yeah, I could see that.
Okay. It's just interesting. I mean, I think he just had a fight, so that's probably why he's all sweaty. But it's one of those like almost the meme. Donovan always
The
sends me the meme of I think
sweaty
it's
black
Peel.
guy.
Yes, I think it's Peel. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, he's just real nervous about what this is going to be like to have his two exes or whatever together. But no, it is interesting. I yeah, giving a lot of grace the fact that she's really proven that she's not on the right side of the law, and so he's really suspending. I have to suspend disbelief on. I guess he has to as well that she'll be okay. But it does seem if you read previous Nightwings, it doesn't seem like this aligns with the characters that we were seeing. Like with
I think
Catalina, in the past, I'd be like, I don't trust her.
at the time it felt like they were setting her up to have like a bigger role in the Bat family books in general. And maybe they walked away from that because of like reader backlash. Because if the message boards were any indication, like there was hatred for this character.
Okay.
And but I kind of feel like this storyline is setting her up to like take more of like a heroic and leadership role that we ultimately like don't get to see because like she's kind of dropped from the books, you know.
Yeah.
I think she died in like some random other book, like you like along like one of those situations where like six or seven like nameless like heroes and villains die. I'm
I
looking
see.
this now.
Probably Infinite
Uh,
Crisis.
yeah, it could have been.
It was an easy way to that. I mean, that was a massacre.
Yeah,
Yeah. As you're looking at that, my final question is just about Tim because it's very painful to watch this stuff unfold, and then Tim just there and being inactive. Do you feel like it's very hard for him? Do you feel like it makes sense with was it hard for you to read? You know, at the time, Tim not jumping in and helping Batman out and staying true to his
it
word to
wasn't
his
hard
father.
for me because I felt like it was coming. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Um,
it was
and
inevitable that he was going to put on his suit.
yeah. FYI, Catalina dies in 2009, Secret Six, number 7.
Okay,
So,
written by Gil Simone.
oh, let me see. Gail Simone and Devin Grayson are friends.
Oh, okay.
So I feel like they would have talked about that, and like she would
Yeah,
have given her, yeah, written by Gail Simone, art by Nicholas Scott.
there you go.
Um, I think I could see why it's hard for Tim, obviously, because yes, like you are so used to like doing things a certain way for a while that like sometimes you have to turn your brain off and like resist to urge to help.
Sure.
So on a much different scale, just like as an example, like have you ever, you know, like you've done a lot of school field trips before, right?
Sure.
Have you ever been like in a situation where you're observing the school field trip from an outsider and you're not the one that has to like manage it, and your brain kind of has to remind yourself, oh, this is not my thing. I'm not like,
Yeah. Not my monkey, not my circus. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like I've taken so many kids to theme parks over the years, and John Wilson, a mutual friend of ours, he and his son came to visit Florida, and I joined them at a theme park. And it was an interesting situation for me because, like, John was making sure his son was hydrated and was getting food. And I was like, oh, I don't have to do anything here. Like, somebody else is managing the kid's needs, making sure the
Yeah.
kid is going to the bathroom and, like, hydrated, making sure that the kid's not in a bad mood. So, like, you know, that's much different than watching a gang war engulf your city, but like the same type of brain pattern where like I could see what Tim's going through here.
Yeah.
And at the same time, like I said, there was a lot of theories online of like, oh, we're gonna see Tim be Robin any day now. And I think eventually the solicitations got close enough where like Tim's name was finally in a solicitation. So people are like, yup, knew it, called it. Tim's gonna be Robin.
Okay.
And the weird thing was, this was being published at the same time as Identity Crisis. And in Identity Crisis, Tim is Robin in the first issue, and his dad knows. And people were like, DC, like Tim, the day that Tim's dad found out, he quits. And somebody like an editor said, oh, that was just a continuity error in the first issue. But then as time goes on, you realize, oh, Identity Crisis takes place after War Games. But they couldn't say that at the time because then it would spoil that Stephanie's
Sure.
tenure as Robin is
Yeah.
not going to be long. And it means
Mhm.
that Tim has a very rough few months ahead
Yeah,
because
for sure.
he loses someone in War Games and in Identity Crisis.
Wah, wah. Yes. Any other thoughts on part 3?
Nope.
Okay. Part 4, Batman Gotham Knights number 56, Rules of Engagement. Writer AJ Lieberman, penciler Al Barrio Nuevo. Inker Francis Portela, colorist Brad Anderson. On the rooftops of Gotham, a mysterious man offers Hush to join his ranks in the upcoming gang war, but Hush refuses. He is teamed up with Prometheus and has his own agenda. Penguin holds an auction for guns and metahumans among the Gotham organized crime. Meanwhile, Nightwing retrieves some of the stolen weapons by Penguin. However, he and Oracle are not handling the situation properly. Batman stops their fight and sends Batgirl to talk with Tarantula and tell her to join Orpheus's gang. At that moment, the Odessa mob discusses a merger, and Alexandra Kosov kills one of her most loyal henchmen for disagreeing with her. Batgirl arrives on the turf of the Latino unified gangs, and they try to run her off, but she easily deals with them until Tarantula joins the fight. She takes the fight away from her people before pausing to listen to Batgirl's offer, which she refuses. Alexandra Kosov's gang teams with Saunders to take on Scarface. Saunders prepares his gang to strike, but soon he discovers that he has been double crossed, and Scarface's gang wipes Saunders' people out. Penguin unsuccessfully tries to hire some additional muscle, and Hush refuses his proposal as well. Penguin tries to convince him to join by teasing him with Riddler's location, but Hush forces Penguin to tell the truth about it. Penguin doesn't really know Riddler's location, and Hush warns Penguin about lying to him. The Odessa mob and their leader, Alexandra, join Scarface's gang and hatch a plan to attack the next big crime boss in Gotham, Henry Akista, by targeting his daughter, Darla. My only point was, and I think the biggest thing in here is just Hush. Hush's presence, and I was surprised that he didn't want to join. He said that destroying Gotham and destroying Batman are mutually exclusive for him. Were you at the time surprised that he didn't want to join? And can you tease us but not spoil how big his part is in the coming acts?
I don't remember Hush doing anything in the coming acts.
Oh,
If it is, it's just
okay.
yeah. I
Then why
think
did they lead up to it like this if nothing's gonna happen?
it's continuity for Gotham Knights because Gotham Knights had been doing like a Hush
Oh,
storyline,
okay.
like this whole thing about him searching for Enigma. Like Gotham Knights did a sequel to Hush where like Tommy Elliott comes back and he's searching, for Riddler and like Joker's involved at one point, and it's. I think that this was just a way of like reminding you of the book's upcoming subplots. It's possible that when we get to Act 2 and 3, like Hush will be there, like front and center, and I'll be like, "Oh, I guess I forgot. It's been almost 20 years," but I don't remember Hush
Okay.
being a part of this at all.
I guess I should also bring up the Dick and Babs
Akko Taco.
argument. Yeah, that is Aqua Taco.
Oh my God, Dick,
Just a lot of
get your foot out
microaggressions,
of your
and yeah, I
mouth.
know. Saying, "Look, I'm the one out here," and she says, "What the hell does that mean?" Um, yeah. So there's
Yeah.
the unprofessionality that and Batman was worried about it involving Tarantula, but it was just the two of them. Uh do you
Well, because they got their unresolved.
Yeah, their issues as well.
And
Yeah.
it's interesting because I mentioned Tim and Stephanie's breakup earlier, but we also have Dick and Babs. So we have two very different breakups where you have like Tim and Stephanie who are just there is no communication whatsoever. Whereas Dick and Babs, there was communication in their breakup. There was even a rebound night. Like they've been in touch with each other, but it's a whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It's painful. It's painful to watch.
Yeah.
I feel
Well,
like they've had good discussions on things, and obviously they're just kind of growing apart, but here it's not a good look to have them bitterly arguing while a fight is going on, and then anything can be misconstrued. It's just hard to read.
yeah, Dick's comment, I'm the one that's out here. It's like, oh, like as I was reading that, I was like, oh no. Like, and I understand, and I don't think that Dick meant any malice by it. I think it's just one of those things that us men do where we say something and as the word is coming out of my mouth, we realize, oh, this can totally be construed this way. This is the worst possible thing I could have said, but it just came out of my mouth and I can't rewind that.
Yeah.
So yeah. And it's a high stress situation for both of them because Babs has been she's more emotionally exhausted as we saw on that splash page. She's been up and Dick is carrying all of his drama with him. So like I think between all of those ingredients, it's just making for a very tense Dick and Babs
Yeah.
interaction.
And Babs is having a hard time too, because later on we're going to see the tension between her and Cass as well. So it's just like she's just not having a good time with her partnerships for sure. And then she'll get
No,
yelled at by Batman as well. So
everyone needs some sleep. It's a hard
yeah, I
working.
know, no doubt. Yeah. Don't go after my girl.
Yeah, going after her. I'm saying
No,
she
no,
isn't.
no. I'm telling the people, the Batman family, don't go after her. Leave her alone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's trying to coordinate you all. She
I
hasn't got
know. She's
any
doing the best
sleep.
she can. Gosh darn it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Any other thoughts on part four?
I just feeding into what I said about Nightwing. I can tell you that like fans were like not happy about this issue because I don't like the word fans weird because like that's one thing that Devin Grayson said. You should all really check out that interview on the Batman universe because she said that like maybe it was her that said like it's not fair to call those people fans when they're like attacking a creator, and I agree with her there. But readers of the book were not happy with like what they felt like propping up Catalina's character at the expense of like others. Like, oh, she gets to defy Batman's orders, and like she's like
Mm,
telling Batman no. Who does she think she is? That's not a fair interpretation, but like reading this issue again, like that kind of took me back to those discussions on the message board and people's conspiracy theories of, oh, they're trying to prop up Catalina and make her a more important character. And the book certainly gives people ammunition for that argument, but I think it's important to tell Batman no sometimes because, as we've seen throughout the storyline, he does not always know what's best. And Catalina's argument is good, which is like, these are kids. I am not going to like place them in the middle of this like gang war this way.
yeah. Do you feel like I think this is a question I may have had later, but do you feel like she's this generation's Huntress?
I think that that's very fair because, like I said, when we talk about the love triangle, she certainly serves that same role, like as the unpredictable wild card member. I think that she's a little more morally ambiguous than Huntress was because Catalina has like killed people and her background's rougher, but certainly she serves a lot of the same roles that Huntress served.
Gotcha. So nothing else on part four besides that?
Let me look at my notes. I don't think I do though.
Okay.
Um, you know, that is Gotham Knights. Oh yeah, just I mean, yeah, we covered it all. I mean, I made a comment that like targeting Darla is like a low move, but like the subsequent issues bring that up, which is that like yeah, like gang members are not supposed to target family members, but
Yeah, it's a big
reason
change.
they
Yeah,
do
which we'll
here.
talk about. Yeah, yeah. So the next part is Robin. It's kind of hard to see. I've not been showing the covers, but this is my favorite cover of the issues that we've read. I really liked it. So
Yeah.
just wanted to comment on that. And it's Dustin Nguyen, whom I'm a big fan too.
Oh,
Yeah. So you can kind
early
of see
Dustin
that there.
Wynn.
Yeah. So just
That's
an awesome
cool.
cover. That's my favorite. So this is part five, Robin, volume four, number 129, Alamo High. Writer Bill Willingham, penciler Giuseppe Comencoli, inker Lorenzo Ruggiero, and colorist Guy Major, who of course is the colorist on BQM's Batgirl as well. The gang war, this one's kind of a longer one because there are like details here, but the gang war escalates quickly in Gotham City and many schools have been forced to close except for the Lewis Grieve High School in Alamo. Darla Akista is being taken to that school by her drivers slash bodyguards and close friends, apparently, as she has a math test to take. The limousine they're traveling in is being followed by a heavy duty car which belongs to the Odessa mob. Darla asks her drivers about the gang war in Gotham, and they can't openly explain the situation to her, but they assure her that she is safe and that they won't let anything happen to her. When they turn around a corner to get to the school, the Odessa vehicle impacts the limousine, and many thugs come out of the car armed with guns and ready to shoot. They take Darla from the back seat of the limousine and try to kidnap her while her bodyguards start a shooting against the thugs. It's almost time for classes to begin, and many students are nearby that scene. Tim Drake is among them and notices something wrong. When he realizes that Darla is being taken by the Odessa mob, he decides that he can't be a quote unquote normal civilian anymore and gets in the middle of the fire, taking out as many thugs as he can. Darla's bodyguards are both killed in the shooting, much to Darla's sorrow. Tim takes Darla out of the danger zone and tells a couple of students to take Darla to the school and stay inside. However, in a few seconds, they are attacked again by some shooters coming from the other end of the street. Tim realizes this time it is the ventriloquist and Scarface's gang after Darla. They shoot one of the students, and Tim prompts his friend Tyrone to get Darla to school as soon as he can. Tim gets closer to Scarface and distracts him from It's funny it says distracts them. I guess it's true. It distracts them from their main target. One of Scarface's thugs report that they have spotted Darla going to the school and they start driving towards that area to make sure that the student who was shot is safe. And after telling the witnesses to call an ambulance, Tim goes behind Scarface. Tyrone gets to the school with Darla and starts telling all the other students roaming on the outside of the school to get inside as fast as they can. Scarface's car is getting closer to the school and is ready to drive Darla and Tyrone over, but Tim drives another car into theirs, just like at the beginning, stopping them just in time to save Darla and Tyrone. Tim pushes his friends inside the school and he stays out to deal with the situation. And yes, in the meantime, his friends are watching all of this and they will question, like, how do you know all this moves and things? Scarface's car is wrecked and the puppet comes out through a window. Tim takes the puppet and smashes it against the ventriloquist's head, who is trying to get out of the wreck as well. Tim uses the puppet to force the gang to come out of the car, unarmed and obeying everything he tells them. At that moment, the news about the shooting at the high school has been spread over the entire city. The editor of WBGK tells Arturo Rodriguez to get there as soon as possible and start a live report from the scene. Arturo is the one who has basically been following Batman through the media. He captured Batman with the, so this guy is a character that's threaded throughout.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Henry Akista discusses the future of the five families when they are notified about the many attacks on their relatives, and Henry also learns that his daughter Darla has been targeted and is in danger. Henry won't stay put and he demands action against his enemies and basically takes control of the five families. At the high school, Tim questions ventriloquist about the sudden hit, and the old man explains that every gang in Gotham is after each other, and all they wanted was to get leverage by taking Darla before anyone else could. Tim feels confident because a couple of cars from the Gotham City Police Department have arrived, and he throws the Scarface puppet away defiantly. However, at that precise moment, defiantly, another car full of thugs from the Odessa mob arrive and shoot down most of the police officers, killing them at once. Only one officer is left, and he desperately calls for backup. Tim realizes that the situation is far too dangerous for him to tackle alone, and he decides to get inside the high school. A few minutes later, more police arrive and the fire department also, and they set a perimeter around the high school to prevent more attacks from the outside. However, in the time it took for them to arrive, which is again scarily relevant. Some of the thugs from the various gangs manage to get inside the building. Tim joins with Darla and Tyrone in one of the halls of the building. Darla is completely scared and she tells Tim that she is not going to be separated from him until the situation is over. At that precise moment, someone shoots Darla from behind in the right shoulder, causing her to faint and start losing blood. Tim desperately tries to give Darla this person typed it out, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, knowing that it could take hours before help comes to them, while Tyrone stands there scared and not knowing what's happening or what should he do. So lots of stuff. I would say that this is the heaviest issue of the ones that we're covering. This one,
Absolutely.
as well as the Alamo, like the Last Stand at the Alamo High or whatever it's called. Yeah, overall thoughts on just what's going on here. I mean, I typed in unfortunate relevance just to today, gun violence at a school. And sometimes the police, I think it was Uvalde, police took a long time to engage with what was
Yeah.
going on. So it's really interesting that this is 2004 and things are coming back around. But yeah, just thoughts on this particular issue.
I have very mixed feelings about this issue. On the one hand, I consider this the strongest issue of Act One.
Okay.
One because it's a more focused storyline as opposed to jumping around with multiple characters in multiple settings. We're following this high school situation, Tim, and it's almost like Die Hard, not quite Die Hard, but in the high school, and he's trying to save Darla. The stakes are immediately set up because we see Darla bond with these bodyguards at the beginning of the issue before, so when they die trying to protect her, you feel that in a way that you wouldn't have felt otherwise. And I actually really appreciate that when they said we will die for you, man, and then you see them do that a few pages later, and Darla is legitimately upset. I thought this issue was very strong. At the same time, too, man, has it aged poorly.
Mm.
Just because of not because of any fault of its own, but because of the prevalence of school shootings in the United States, and it's a very uncomfortable issue to read in 2023. And I don't remember if you know this, Stella, and the listeners might not, but my father was one of the first responders to the Parkland shooting back in 2018.
Yeah, I remember
So that
hearing that.
was, yeah, and that really affected him. My father was never in the line of fire, but he helped the crews get the bodies out, and that affected him. Him and my brother Jesse, they helped the survivors with a lot of resources and counseling, and it's the community has had a hard time recovering from that. Even like years later now, like you will go into restaurants and you'll still see like Parkland Strong and stuff like that. So this issue, when we're having all this conversation about gun violence and school shootings, it's uncomfortable. The one part that stretches credibility for me a bit is all of the gang people, kind of like the snowball effect that we see from this, where they're like, well, it started because they were trying to get Darla, but then the other gang members showed up because they were trying to get the other gang members. And I'm like, would they really all go to this school in broad daylight to kill each other in a gang war? Like, that I had a hard time buying, but I liked the personal stakes of it for Tim and everything. And even like the end where he's like giving Darla CPR, and you see his friend Tyrone, he's just shell shocked, like, Tim, I don't know what to do. Like, Bill Willingham is a great writer. And this is, like I said, the strongest issue of Act One. I was struck by at the time that I was reading this, like I said, there was like, is Tim gonna be Robin again? What are we doing with spoiler? It did not escape my notice and the notice of others that Stephanie is nowhere to be seen in this issue. And the book is still called Robin. And now we're back to focusing on Tim. There was a single issue during Stephanie's tenure as Robin where Tim does not appear at all as well. So there's like a bit of symmetry there.
Was there an issue in in Tim's run where wasn't there a bully or a school shooter? Or am I like thinking of something else?
One of his bullies died, Carl Rank or something. Donovan would remember more about that because that
Okay.
was like an issue that, like, yeah, there was a bully that died, and there was like a ninja camp. I don't think it was a school shooting
Okay.
though.
Just wondered.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is I mean, besides what obviously what's going on, but the fact that Tim is out of costume, repeatedly mentioning that he's no longer Robin, that he couldn't set, because this is to a certain extent a betrayal of his promise to his father. And Tim is he's a good man, a good young man, and but he just could not sit by there. I think it's just like the power of this. When we have the wrap up of this particular storyline, I will ask you a question that is going to be controversial about it. But yeah, this is just like so much goes down, and this is I think this one and then the next one with the Batgirl, like the stakes. Now we realize what the stakes are because yeah, no one is safe. They're going after children, wives, which is it's nuts. I don't know where that break is. It just does it seem like a realistic escalation in this type of war? Like we're just dropping all sort of lines and
I've never
ethics.
been in a gang war before, so like I don't
I'm
like
surprised.
I know, like, especially with this trouble that Donovan is always getting us into.
Yeah.
But so I don't want to say the organized crime families would never do that because I don't know what an organized crime family
Yeah.
would do. I do love the part where like that one criminal answers the phone and he's like telling like um Darla's father like, oh, they got like, he has tears in his eyes because in addition to reporting to him that his daughter is targeted, his own family, he's also heard that like his own family has been killed,
Yeah.
but he's like working through those tears to kind of like report like, and your daughter's also like, I'm like, oh man, like they Bill Willingham really brought at this issue.
Yeah.
um
Well, if I
yeah,
think back to, I mean, Helena's family was massacred.
yeah,
So I mean,
yeah.
if this isn't necessarily new, but I don't know if something in the past changed, like after some of these mass, like wiping out and creating a new status quo. It was like no more, families are off limits, and
I
now
feel
it's
like
just
that's
like,
like a real
eh.
world thing, though. Families are off limits.
Yeah, I would agree.
Um, we're also reminding ourselves, like, whenever I say criminals would never do that, criminals would never like all congregate at school, I have to remind myself this is Gotham City
Yeah,
in the DC universe, where
yeah,
like the rules are just different.
yeah.
This is like this does not work like the real world. Gotham is a very different place.
And it even, I mean, because it starts with a parlay, basically, that everyone was coming to this meeting. It was supposed to be a peaceful negotiation. And then that was a massacre. There were only 8 made it out alive. And then with Orpheus meeting up with the Yakuza, and that seems like a peaceful thing, and they betray it. So it's like nothing, it's almost as if that meeting started everything off. Like anything goes now. There's no one safe. You can't trust anybody. But
Well, if Stephanie wanted to end Tim's relationship with Darla, she found a very creative and
yo,
roundabout way to do it.
creative, roundabout, psychopathic. Let's just start
and
loading up the
and she
adjectives.
also stopped Dick from marrying Catalina at the same
Yeah, there's
time.
the one
Like,
pro and the pro con column.
yeah.
My word. Yeah, let's if I did digital editing, we could write down and I'd have it posted on YouTube. Any other thoughts on part 5?
No.
Okay. So part 6 is Batgirl 55 Total War. Writer Dylan Horrocks, penciler and inker Sean Phillips, colorist Jason Wright. 2 hitmen working for the Odessa mob approach a children's playground. The smaller one, Yakov, is reluctant to kill a small child. His partner explains that the old rules are finished and they will strike at their enemies where it hurts the most. Batgirl arrives and beats them unconscious before they can hurt anyone. Oracle continues to direct Batgirl around the city to different hotspots as the gang war rages. Batgirl tells Oracle that the Odessas are targeting Mafia family members, and this means the war is about to get a lot worse. Batgirl asks Oracle where Stephanie Brown is. Oracle snaps at her and reminds her that Stephanie was fired as Robin. Batgirl tells Oracle not to talk to her like she's stupid. Oracle apologizes and says that she's gone without sleep for 30 hours. So that's what he said. She needs sleep. Police dispatch puts out a call for all units to go to Louis E. Grieve Memorial High School, where there is a shootout. And Oracle reports this to Batman that there was a bungled mob hit at Tim Drake's high school. And Batman drops the men he's fighting and goes straight to that school. Stephanie Brown is back on the streets wearing her spoiler costume again. She fights several gangsters until one of them gets the drop on her. Batgirl arrives and saves Stephanie's life with a batarang. She tells Spoiler to go home because she shouldn't be on the streets. Spoiler leaves, but Batgirl runs after her and asks if she is lying to her when she says she'll go home. Spoiler doesn't say anything and jumps off a rooftop. Oracle tells Batgirl to drop whatever she's doing and rendezvous with Batman at Louis Grieve High School. Batgirl leaps onto a police helicopter and rides her way over. The building is surrounded by reporters and SWAT officers. Batman hides on the same rooftop as a SWAT team by staying in the shadows and gives orders to Batgirl and Nightwing. Oracle angrily insists that Batman should let her coordinate their plans because she has more information, but Batman tells her that what he needs from her is radio silence, and this makes Oracle even angrier. Batgirl has leapt onto the new Okay. Batgirl has leapt onto the newscopter of reporter Arturo Rodriguez. There he is again, and his cameraman Charlie. When she jumps down, they feel the copter shake, and Rodriguez insists that he saw Batman, but nobody else on the helicopter believes him. Batgirl has to meet up with Batman on the opposite side of the building, avoiding dozens of cops and reporters in broad daylight. Batgirl sneaks right through a giant crowd by using any cover she can find and staying in the shadows, and suddenly everybody hears gunshots inside the school. I guess we'll start with the tension between Babs and Cass. Thoughts?
I'm glad to see Cass advocating for herself and advocating for her friends. It was not okay what Barbara did. At the same time, like, I understand what happened there because, like you said, up for 30 hours. When we are sleep deprived, we especially, and we are in high stress situations, we become different people sometimes, and we say things that can sometimes hurt our friends. It's happened to me, it's happened to other people I know. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Mhm. So, yeah, it's understandable if that makes sense. Like, it's not Yeah.
You choke, I'm gonna have to hang up and call 911 on this call. So
Right. It's not okay. Like, I'm
yeah.
not excusing Babs' actions, but I understand what led to them. You're laughing so hard that your webcam's shaking.
Oh, okay. Yes, and I think this wouldn't have been as intense an interaction if Babs hadn't already called Cass stupid-ish when she couldn't read and finding out she still
The
couldn't read.
library issue.
Yeah, so it's piling on. So that still hasn't been resolved. I'm glad that
How
Barbara
long ago was that?
apologized. Recent.
Oh, okay.
By recent, the past couple BTO episodes.
Okay.
But
Wow.
so that's yeah, it's very recent. I couldn't tell you month in 2004, but yeah. Well, actually, probably just this issue before, probably 54.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm glad that Barbara though owns it immediately and apologizes because that would be bad if she just explained I'm sleep deprived and didn't say I'm sorry. So I do appreciate that. But yeah, it's hard to see this relationship dissolve or just
I wouldn't say it's
struggling.
dissolving. I'd say it's having a uh,
Yeah, growing pain.
realistic conflict.
Yeah.
Like dissolving. I feel like that's mischaracterizing it. Like when we say dissolving, does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah. Maybe
Like
it's too high or heavy
like
or
we've all
extreme.
had our moments in our personal relationships. Like we've had our moments in our personal relationships where we have had conflict, but I've never seen that as the dissolving of our relationship.
Yeah.
That's just conflicts that happen when one or more parties are stressed and don't communicate properly.
Yeah. I agree with you. Yeah.
Like that time when I didn't sleep for 30 hours and you asked me, where Dom was, and I said, "You fired him, remember?"
And
Why
then I
can't you
said,
read, Stella?
don't talk to me like I'm stupid. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I do have several questions involving the Cass and Steph situation. I'm not surprised that it's Cass who brings up spoiler. I read between the lines and kind of think that Cass might be saying that Steph could help. Do you read between those lines? Like she's asking not necessarily like, where is Steph? But it's like, we need more hands. Where is Steph? How do you read it?
It's very hard to read it because like Cass is a woman of very few words still.
Yeah.
And unlike Batman or like Tim in this situation, we're not getting like paragraphs of internal monologue, a lot. And this is one thing that I do like about Cass's book is that the artwork speaks for itself and Cass's actions speak for itself. So it is hard to say where she's coming from. I read it as a concern
Okay.
because not just like, oh, is Stephanie going to die of this game war, but like her friend,
Yeah.
like Stephanie was her friend,
Yep.
there were people on the message boards that are like, Stephanie broke her promise. She never taught Cass how to read. Like, that's something people were mad. They're like, Stephanie promised to teach her other. I guess people were just mad at women a lot and on message boards in 2000. I say were like as if there's
As if
any
things
less
have changed.
I know, as yeah. Now in the year 2023, there's no misogyny anywhere on the internet. We
Racism
eradicated
is gone.
it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
all gone, folks.
Yep. What a beautiful world we live in.
But anyway, like she's wondering where her friend is. Like my friend was Robin. My friend was working this alongside Batman. Now she's gone. I want to know what happened. Like, and there's a crisis going on. So like, why isn't my friend helping? What is this?
Yeah. Oh.
And I appreciate that because I always liked the Cass and Stephanie relationship.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. So then you don't think that it's a contradiction that Cass tells Steph to stay off the streets? If it's more concerned, because
Hmm.
for me, if I think that Cass is asking because she feels like Steph is another body they can use, then when she suddenly says, don't be around, I'm like, why? But if you are reading as concern, then she's worried about her safety. And if we think about solo number 10, then I guess so your viewpoint and mine are just two
I
different
guess it can
things.
be all of those things.
Yeah.
Like it can be like she could be asking about about Steph for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
Like I said, it can be hard to read Cass, and that's not a complaint. That's one of the beautiful things about it is that we let the artwork and everything speak
Yeah.
for itself. and her words. So it's we don't always know everything that goes on in Cass's head, but yeah, there's complicated feelings about Stephanie, and like you said,
Absolutely.
she doesn't want her friend hurt.
Yeah.
She's got to teach her how to read so she can read a book in front of Barbara and say, "Who's stupid now?" And then she holds up the book in front of Barbara and then drops the book like a microphone and then just walks away and
Interesting.
sets the clock tower on fire.
What do you think the book is going to be?
The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. I do, if we can see it, this artwork here, this is when she's saying, stay off the street. And then Steph says, I will. And then, um, does Cass know that Steph is lying, but ask the question anyways?
Oh, Cass reads body language. She
Yeah.
absolutely knows that Steph
Because
is
she
lying.
says, are you lying to me? Which is interesting. But
Yeah,
does she think that friends don't lie to friends? So it's like a double take for her?
that's a good question. um, she knows that Stephanie's lying, but I guess she's trying to like reconcile like what's going on. Like not just about her staying off the streets, but that, as we're going to see in Catwoman, Stephanie is ultimately responsible for this gang war. And there's some tension, and Cass is picking up on that Stephanie is hiding something and feeling guilty about something. And Cass, as a reader of like body language, is definitely seeing all of that being carried. Man, if she ever gets a look at Nightwing's body language, she's like, man, this whole Bat family's a mess right now. Like,
I know.
but like, why are you yelling at me, Barbara? Like Dick's over here with his guilt and he got raped and like Stephanie's starting gang wars. Like, leave me alone.
Yeah, I know, seriously. Reading is like the least of her issues at this point.
Yeah.
I am surprised that Oracle isn't advocating for Steph at this point, just all hands on deck and all that. And she just goes along with, well, Batman fired her. I mean, Babs is one of the least like the least what's a good phrase, but she's the least likely to just like blindly follow Batman orders. So I'm just surprised that that's just a little thing to be fired. If you need people bodies on the street and you feel like you can trust them, I feel like maybe you should utilize them.
Well, I feel like even Barbara had like a, sassy comment about Bruce firing Stephanie earlier in
Yeah.
War Games 2. She's like, well, you fired,
Yeah.
spoiler.
Yep.
But at the same time, I think that Barbara was a lot more dismissive of Stephanie before the Brian Q. Miller run.
Okay.
Like they didn't have the best relationship. Like Black Canary was kind of like part of
Yeah.
Stephanie's training and everything, but
Yeah.
I
Kind of.
think that like Barbara had the general attitude of like Stephanie was in over her head and like this might not be the best situation for her.
Yeah.
But you would think that Barbara would be more sympathetic to that based on her own history.
For sure. Yeah. Women helping others, and yeah, supporting others, yeah, or supporting women. So I guess the team doesn't have cross communication like present comics do, where if the Bat family are out, everyone's on the same channel. Barbara is doing a lot of work. Batman's giving her grief. Is Batman using Barbara properly in this
No,
act? Okay.
absolutely not.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't even know why there's this argument going on here.
Yeah, no, it's Batman thinking that he can do everything the best himself. And Barbara brings up a point. She's like, I know the schematics of this school. I know that I like, and Batman just shuts her down. Um, no, he's not using her properly,
Okay.
and lives are at stake. So
Would
good job,
you would you like to state your name and say Batman is a jerk for the record?
Batman. My name is Joshua Lapin-Bertone, and I'd like to state that Batman is a jerk.
Thank you. I'm collecting and collating them.
Oh my god.
No, I'm just kidding.
I've
And
written that on the DC site before, like, because I write the official Batman column for DC.com, and like in the column, I get a lot of free space to say certain things, and I've said at times, yeah, Batman's kind of a jerk in some situations, like he
yep, don't have to convince me. And then, yeah, my final thought is just the importance of Cass being on this particular mission and protecting the children at the beginning. She certainly, I mean, No One Dies Tonight. Remember that storyline way back when? And Innocent Lives and all of that. So it seems like it's especially poignant for her.
Yeah, one note that I have too is in talking about how with Cass, we let the art tell the story a lot of the times in her body language. One of my favorite scenes is as she's sneaking through the school, you see the backpack and the shoe, and she looks at it and she kind of like takes that in, like knowing this was a kid that was gunned down. And I thought that that was a very powerful page.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other thoughts on part 6?
Nope.
Okay, part 7, a big reveal here. Catwoman number 34, Catwoman volume 3, I should say. Cold Hard Facts. Writer Ed Brubaker, penciler Paul Gulacy, inker Jimmy Palmiotti, colors Laurie Cronenberg. The gang war has escalated quickly and has reached the East End with fury, much to Catwoman's contempt. Ever since the gang war started, Catwoman has been busy stopping criminals from murdering innocent people in her territory. She stops a car chase and delivers a warning to the thugs involved. However, an innocent teen was shot during the chase, and Selena takes him to Leslie's clinic. Leslie informs Selena that ever since the gang war started, she hasn't had any rest as the bodies of injured people keep coming to the hospital. The news about the shooting at Tim's school is on TV, and Leslie feels responsible for the consequences and for not being able to stop Bruce from becoming Batman. Selena gets a call from Holly and leaves Leslie's place at once. Selena. Holly informed. Do you remember? Holly
Oh, you
informs.
understand?
You, Selena, you fun. Oh man. Holly informs Selena that someone arranged a meeting between two gangs and that the responsible party behind it all is planning on eliminating the members of the gang. Catwoman goes as fast as she can to the meeting place, but she arrives too late since the thugs have all been killed by Mr. Freeze and his cold gun. Catwoman confronts Freeze and manages to drop a couple of hits on the villain, causing him to fall down the window. Really fall out of the. She defenestrates him of this building. Freeze stops his fall by creating an ice slide with his gun, but he couldn't stop his momentum and ended up hitting against a brick wall, falling unconscious. Catwoman thinks about calling Batman to make sure that Freeze is locked up for good, but she's distracted when she spots Spoiler on a nearby rooftop. Catwoman starts chasing Spoiler, who starts running away from the area, but Catwoman manages to catch up with her and she questions her about her business on the East End. Spoiler is afraid that Catwoman might tell Batman about her, and then she takes off her mask, revealing an afraid and defenseless Stephanie Brown, who feels guilty about the whole gang war. Catwoman doesn't understand Stephanie, and she takes her to a safe place where they can talk and she can explain herself. Once in this safe place, Selena reveals her face to Steph and they create a trust bond. Selena gives Steph some tea to calm her nerves, probably chamomile, and asks her to tell about her involvement in the gang war. Stephanie explains that after Batman fired her from being Robin, she decided to prove to him that she was worthy of the job by taking one of Bruce's personal files from the Bat computer. I do have a question on this. This file was one of Batman's many contingency plans, and it consisted of organizing a meeting with all the crime lords in Gotham and place them under Batman's direct control. Stephanie explains that she followed the plan step by step, just like a cake, but that somehow it failed because Batman's undercover agent didn't show up in the meeting, which at that point I thought, oh, but Orpheus was there. But Selena can't believe, because we find out who that undercover agent was. Selena can't believe that one of Batman's plans might have failed, and she asks Stephanie to reveal the name of the undercover agent. And Stephanie tells her that it was Matches Malone and that she had never heard of him. Selena understands that Bruce made a mistake. She doesn't tell Stephanie this, but she understands that Bruce made a mistake by not trusting Stephanie the fact that Batman and Matches Malone are one and the same person. Selena knows that things are about to get worse, and she stares out the window looking at the bat signal that has been lit in the sky. So now we know. So my questions at the 12-cent adventure are answered, that she was the one who set it up and she's so dejected because her plan really failed. And well, yeah, I guess we'll see. Okay. Um we have some heavy questions. So I'll start with like regular
Oh
ones,
yeah,
but
yeah.
we've got some close to lethal force with what Catwoman's doing. Um, could she be Huntress Light
Oh
or
man,
Huntress?
you just see Huntress everywhere. Like,
Oh,
first of
I
all,
feel bad for Huntress, you know.
I know. You always feel bad for Huntress.
Yeah,
She's right behind you on the
I
the poster.
know.
I've been staring at her
Her
at her.
tatas.
I know. I was about to
I'm
say like
sorry. That's the
they're
only. I
the way
mean,
that the camera's
I
like the way that the
know.
camera is like the tatas were like
Yeah,
right over
it's
the.
like see my face or see that. Yeah,
I know,
tattoos.
and it's the '90s, so like they're huge.
Yeah, Benes. Yeah.
Yeah, ooh, yeah. Um, Catwoman was the original Huntress. She
Okay,
was the
I can see that.
original like bad girl of Gotham, like moral ambiguity, like
Yeah,
skirting both sides of the law. So
that's true.
I'm not
She's
really
the
gonna.
OG.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
She takes off her mask inside the clinic. Were you shocked by this?
No, this was kind of like indicative of like Catwoman in the, and plus she had like a coat on or something, I believe, over
Yeah,
it.
trench
I
coat.
mean,
Yeah.
not that that helps, but like Catwoman isn't like Iron Man,
Okay.
where like you see Iron Man take off his mask and like it's Tony Stark. Like she's kind of like more of like an in the shadows that like she doesn't. People know that a Catwoman exists, but are they gonna like recognize her by costume? And like if they see like her without her mask on, are they gonna recognize Selena Kyle?
Yeah.
And Selena Kyle was kind of like the neighborhood protector of the East End during this era with the Ed Brubaker run. This run was very, very critically acclaimed at the time. And I remember a lot of positive buzz about it during this era. And you had Leslie Tompkins as a supporting character, like kind of as Selena's moral compass, and like they would talk to each other a lot. So this took me back to that. And Selena's whole secret identity thing has always kind of been weird.
Okay.
So like pre-crisis, everyone knew that Selena was Catwoman. She had like a mugshot, she had an arrest record. Post-crisis, they changed it so that like they said that she erased all of her like arrest records, but as time went on, it was clear that like, oh, she had never actually maybe been arrested as Catwoman, and people didn't know that Selena Kyle was Catwoman. She had like a secret identity. She went to New York and ran for mayor, and she framed Catwoman for her own murder. She like faked Selena Kyle's death and made it look like Catwoman did it. And then there's like an issue at the beginning of the Brubaker run where she tells Bruce, like as Selena Kyle, she's telling Bruce, and this is before Hush, so like she doesn't know that Bruce is Batman, and Bruce isn't quite sure that she's Catwoman, although like he has a pretty good idea at that point. Although I think he knew at that point, because like Bruce kind of finds out in off-panel land post-crisis. But anyway, like Selena makes the comment, "Oh, yeah, there's some legal issues because I was legally declared dead in New York. I'm having my lawyers sort through it." So Selena Kyle's not like a super known figure, but Catwoman's always been casual with her secret identity.
Okay.
And at this point, we are in a post Hush world where like Selena knows that
Yeah.
Bruce is Batman. It is interesting, and I had to note like she knows that Bruce is Batman. She does not know that Tim is Robin, and that
Yeah.
was kind of like an interesting thing in the Tim Drake world where like knowing that Bruce was Batman did not always mean knowing that Tim was Robin. And Tim like kept it from Oracle for like a long time before Oracle like finally revealed that she knew. And as we talked about when we mentioned Stephanie at the beginning of this podcast, like if you know that Bruce is Batman, you might be able to work out that Tim is Robin based on like different things like, oh, Tim Drake lived in Wayne Manor when his father was hospitalized,
Yeah.
they're next door neighbors, things like that. But it doesn't surprise me that Selena doesn't know that Tim's Robin. It makes sense when you think about it, but it does like give you an initial pause.
Gotcha. Even though Leslie is making her speech about Bruce, do you feel like she's also talking about Selena?
I think, yeah, with Leslie, it's always something like that too. And this is also setting up Leslie, an upcoming storyline with Leslie,
Okay.
because as you know, Leslie does something morally ambiguous. I don't know if you will get to that because, like, it happens in a sequel to War Games. I think it was called War Crimes. That was like months after War Games, and it was only in the Bat books. It wasn't in like Birds of Prey or Nightwing.
Okay.
But it would be an interesting postscript to talk about, and maybe we'll talk about it after we finish War Games, like just briefly, like what that storyline was, and it basically reveals something that Leslie Tompkins did in between the panels during the final hours of War Games.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I can find it on Comixology.
Yeah.
which is really Amazon
Yeah.
now. Okay. Uh, so about the computer, two questions. Number one, did Batman not learn from Justice League Tower of Babel? And number two, is it realistic that Steph would have been able to unlock his bat computer to get that and download the file? Like, I feel she's no Oracle. I feel like there would have been locks and stuff. And how would she know what to look for? This I'm having trouble, like, just that she knew of this plan, that she could find it out.
One thing that adults are very good at doing is underestimating teenagers when it comes to technology. Like, oh, I put a lock on so and so's phone so they can't go on Snapchats, and then like the teenager is able to like get around the parental controls. Like, I think Batman thought that he had Stephanie more locked out than he actually did
But it's
because, like,
Batman.
yeah, but come on,
Okay.
Batman. Batman's good at what he does. He is not good at understanding teenagers.
Okay.
So I could see him like, I put a password, and like Alfred like, sir, was the password Batman? No. I'll be right back. Like, I don't know. Or maybe like it could have been something. And then it's a question of like when she took them, because you get the impression that she took them like on the way out. And how would he have like not seen that?
Yeah.
I guess it does raise a lot of follow-up questions, because like I don't think that she would have been able to take it on the way out. So did she do it while she was still Robin, like in case this all goes south? So like maybe it's a case where like she was on the computer working on like some like criminology like study thing that Batman did, and he's like, I'll be right back, I gotta go to the bathroom. And then like while he was in the bathroom, she like put it on a thumb drive.
Yeah.
It's, I guess
Or
there's a few
snuck back
scenarios.
into the cave at one point. I don't know.
I don't know if she would have been able to sneak back in
But she
after being
snuck in
but
initially.
but they found her like when she snuck in.
Yes.
Like she snuck in, but once she was there, they knew. So if she snuck back in to get the files, I think that they would have like found out that she was there.
Gotcha. Hmm. Hmm.
Like she's
Tower of Babel.
good.
Oh yeah.
Oh, Tower, but yeah, no, Batman's learned nothing.
Okay.
Like these contingency plans keep on blowing up in his face.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
no, he should have deleted that from his computer after Tower of Babel. But he didn't because he's bad. I mean, and even like Infinite Infinite Crisis, when that happens, like like didn't he create Brother Eye or something like
I
that?
think
Like
he is
that's coming.
OMAC. Yeah.
But yeah, like so I think that Batman really needs an intervention where it's like you gotta just like stick to punching bad guys and throwing batarangs. Like
Yeah.
no more of these like contingency
Huge
big
plans.
concept
Yeah.
plans like Tower of Babel, War Games, OMAC. This is done. Like talk to your kids. Nightwing's clearly having a nervous breakdown, and
Yeah.
like you have Stephanie so frazzled that she's starting gang wars, and Tim was just in the school shooting. Like y'all need some self care.
Yeah.
Like
Cass needs to read. Yeah. All of that.
yeah, Cass needs to read. Stephanie, you were going to help her with that, but like Stephanie doesn't have time to help her with that because she's too busy trying to impress you.
Yeah.
And now she's never going to kiss Prince Eric.
Man, what a bummer.
I know.
I do point out that Catwoman is like the Master of Whispers, varies from Game of Thrones, just that she has all these little birds around her that report to her. Catwoman calls Batman out for not letting Steph in on the secret that Matches Malone is in fact Batman. And it is ironic that, of course, Catwoman does know. Do you agree or disagree that Batman is at fault with this? And how much do you feel like he shares the blame for the beginning of this gang war, if at all?
It's a complicated question.
I know.
Selena says like, how can you not tell him that Matches Malone is Batman? And it's like, I feel like it's not something that was kept from Stephanie. It's just that like Matches Malone didn't come up because Matches Malone is not like an every night persona. Sure. Like you can go years reading Batman comics where Matches Malone doesn't show up. So I don't think it's like I'd be more surprised if I was Selena. I'd be more surprised that she didn't know that he was Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
That's like the bigger omission, but that's not what started the gang war. Um, Stella's showing the panel.
Yeah.
Poor Stephanie. I like Selena and Stephanie here. The like the older like mentor figure, kind of like easing Stephanie's mind because she really needs someone to talk to because trying to impress Batman has just completely made her snap. All the pressure. As a reader at the time, I was not a fan of this revelation because I'd been reading spoiler like since the 90s, in Robin comics. And I thought she was treated poorly during her time as Robin. And this was very much this is all Stephanie's fault thing. And I didn't like what that did, what this does to the character and what this says about the character. I thought it was a very negative thing to do to the character and that she should have known better, which I don't like using those words in that order because that sounds like a very dismissive thing to say, like you should have known better. But the way that she had been written before this, like having her do this, like it's a very cruel thing for the writers to put on her, to have her do this and to have her make this big mistake. And it's almost like it's the writers justifying Batman's firing of her. Like, oh, this is why Stephanie couldn't have been Robin. Look at this big screw up that she did. And as readers at the time, we know that somebody's dying at the end of War Games, and this does not look good for Stephanie because this is like, oh, what if this is setting Stephanie up to die to make this right? Because now she did this thing that she can't take back.
Yeah.
So it was not a lot of good feelings walking away from that revelation for 2004, Josh.
Does it make sense for all of this to come out in Catwoman's book?
I'm okay with it coming out in Catwoman's book because Stephanie needed to talk to somebody, and Selena offered her the support that she needed to unload on. And I can't see Stephanie doesn't have that relationship with Babs yet. And honestly, everyone else is busy. Like they are putting out 20 fires a minute. Stephanie would have told almost anyone at that point because you could see she was like bursting with guilt.
Right.
And I think that Selena is an older and wiser figure and had some maternal instincts to like, see that this girl needed help. Because Selena has been taking on a more maternal role, like in the Catwoman run, like helping people that need it, helping people get back on their feet, looking out for people, being a protector. So yeah, I'd say this makes sense for Catwoman in 2004.
Do you think the reason why she doesn't tell Cass is because she knows how close Cass is with Batman?
I think that the situation with Cass was very, very fast at the time. Like, Cass was in the middle of like handling the situation in the school. There wasn't time to like sit down, have tea, and talk about this.
Yeah.
She might have told Cass, but I think that I think that Stephanie needed to hear comforting words. And I love Cass, but she's not a comforting words person. Like, she needed to have a conversation with somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And, Cass can only contribute so much to the conversation.
Yeah. Okay. Is Stephanie aware of Catwoman's close sometimes romantic relationship with Batman?
Maybe through like gossip from like them. But I mean, at this point in DC history, it wasn't as close because like in Post Crisis, they were apart for a long time. They recently were together in Hush, but that was like over and done with really like fast. And Tim may have mentioned it to Stephanie afterwards, like, oh, Batman and Catwoman were a thing for a hot minute, but I don't know.
Okay. I think you're right. I think it needed to be woman to woman. And I think it also needed to be someone who would listen with empathy and not with judgment. And I think a lot of the Bat family would have immediately reacted with judgment. And we don't see that here with Catwoman. But yeah, in intense, I liked this issue a great deal. I mean, I was shocked at the revelation for sure, but it's certainly there's a lot going on here. And I like that Huntress. I like that
Wow.
Catwoman. Sorry about that. That was a Freudian slip. I like that Catwoman is very territorial in protecting her East End and everything. Any other thoughts on part 7?
No, just it's not a surprise that you like the issue. Ed Brubaker, very good writer, and this
Absolutely.
run was like, the early days of his like rising star, like in kind of like the crime noir Batman like space.
Yep.
Because obviously he went on to do, oh, Alexa, or I have a notification on my Echo Dots.
Okay.
Let's see what it is, BTO listeners. Ziggy, what's my notification? Oh, it's not going to tell me. Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll find out
Um,
the podcast.
yeah,
What
I
if it's
guess
like
so.
something? It's like something embarrassing, like Donovan is here and he's ready.
There's the final issue cover, so a bit,
Yeah,
yeah.
not looking good
It
for.
is not looking good. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
Uh,
part 8. Batman number 631, Last Stand at Alamo High. Writer Bill Willingham, penciler Kinson Lowe, inker Aaron Sode, colorist Tony Ayinya. Several different groups of criminals are inside Lewis E. Grieve High School, and numerous teachers and students are trapped inside with them, including Darla Akista, who was shot since the hostage situation began, and Tim Drake, the former Robin. Tim has managed to get a number of them to safety in the nurse's office, and he is relieved when Batman, Batgirl, and Nightwing arrive via the sewers and are able to clear the gunmen out. After learning of Darla Akista's current state, Batman carries her unconscious body from the school while the media swarm over the image, some claiming that he has killed her, while others claim he and his allies made the situation worse, thus hastening her end. I will say that at one point it did look like Batgirl was snapping necks. I don't know if I'll be able to zoom in on this, but I was concerned. Let's see if I can find this. There's Nightwing. Getting closer. Getting closer. Look at this. Yeah, doesn't it look like she's snapping necks over here?
I'm looking at it.
She's twisting them. I mean, she's not, but it looks
It's
like she is.
yeah. It doesn't look good.
Yeah.
I could look at it as like she's putting them in a chokehold. She's like,
Okay.
covering their mouths, kind of like in the when you play the Arkham games and you like, do like the takedowns.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. I did like that the Bat Gang is back together briefly, as far as we know. We don't know. But the main point that I want to talk about, and this is the controversial question, is about the reporter at the end. Let me bring up that quotation.
Alexander Knox. He's not Alexander Knox, but he plays like the same role as Alexander
Oh,
Knox
okay.
for most of this storyline.
What was it? It was about the, I guess, am I not going to be able to find it? But basically, that because of the intervention of the heroes. Oh, here we go. Many facts remain. This is Arturo. Many facts remain unclear at this time, but one fact sadly seems indisputable. The unauthorized intervention of costume vigilantes into this crisis seems to have caused the death of at least one young girl. Do you feel like this is true? And do you feel like we can lead it all back to Tim and his intervention and telling the kids to go back to the school when they were out on the street? Is Tim partially to blame for all of this going down?
I would not blame Tim
Okay.
because, he. I think that Darla in the streets was not going to do any better out in the open where she could have been picked off. Um, I think Darla was doomed whether she went inside or outside. Tim did everything he could to protect her and put the situation in a controlled area. Ultimately, it was him against an army of gang members. Now, technically, what the reporter is saying is true because had these war games not been made and enacted,
Mm-hmm.
Dharma would still be alive. But then it ultimately becomes like, okay, how do you say responsibility? Ultimately, responsibility of Darla's death is the person who ordered the hit. You
Yes.
can't blame Stephanie on Darla's death. You can't blame Bruce on Darla's death. Like, it's somebody said we're going to kill this teenage girl, and they went ahead and did it. I guess spoiler, like the end of the issue doesn't make it clear whether Darla survives or not.
Correct. Yeah.
She's dead, and that's
Oh,
confirmed in subsequent issues.
okay.
And I have more to say about Darla after we talk about the other things about this issue, because Darla's death is not the end of her story either. Very weirdly enough. Yeah, there's weirdness. That's the whole like responsibility thing. Like, is it the person's fault if this, like, it's whoever ordered the hit on her, that's who's responsible.
Okay. That was actually the main point that I had, so you can bring up your other points.
Oh, well, I'm glad that Batman showed his face in front of the camera, not just because of the stupid, like, he's never been photographed retcon, but because I am annoyed at the beginning of the issue that they spend so much time trying to figure out how to sneak into the school when, like, every minute could be costing a kid its life, where it's
Right.
like, who cares if you are caught on camera? Get your butt into that school right now. Is your urban legend thing worth a child's life? Like, run past them, like, we both saw, across the Spider-Verse, like, Gwen doesn't, like, wait for, like, the cops to, like, be gone to sneak into the Guggenheim. She, like, webs the cops, waves hi to them, runs into the school, runs
Right.
into the museum.
Yeah.
That's what Batman should have done. Would that have saved Darla? Probably not. She was already shot, by the time that they got in there. But there was way too much time spent trying to, like, preserve not being seen. And I think that, like, this was not a situation that did. That's why I'm glad that Batman carried her out at the end, because, like, if you are going to break your rule, do it to, like, save this girl's life. Then he, like, looks at Nightwing and, like, Batgirl, like, what are you two doing being seen on camera? And it's like, dude,
Yeah.
you're on camera right now. Like,
Yeah.
but I'll say it for you. Bat hypocrites. There you go.
There
Like,
you go. Yeah, he got all on her and they had to do that whole erase the tape stuff. Yeah.
yeah. And also Nightwing's been on camera so many times with the Titans. So, like, like, who cares if he's on camera at a school?
Yeah.
Like, postscript on Darla. So I'll say this because you're not going to cover any of these issues on BTO, because this all happens in Robin's book and Shadow Pact.
Okay.
Her dad later makes, like, a deal with some, like, mystical villain, and it brings Darla back to life as, like, and she becomes, like, kind of like a super powered being called the Warlock's daughter. And she's around a little bit for, like, Tim's run before Infinite Crisis happens, and the book skips ahead to 1 year later. She later joins a group called Shadow Pact, and yeah, it's a whole thing. It's a really weird, like, legacy for, like, this character who was just kind of a complication in Tim's romance with Stephanie Brown, that, like, all of a sudden she's like this reincarnated, like, undead teenage girl that's a part of Shadow Pact. But
Yeah. Interesting.
yeah.
Any other thoughts on part 8?
No, no.
Okay.
um
So then
I
thoughts.
like
Yeah.
I like Tim and Dick together again. That was nice.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. So then I guess thoughts on Act 1, and would you give it a grade?
Hmm. Maybe a low B.
Okay. Okay.
Like, kind of like good, not great. Like, I mean, I definitely loved, like, the Robin issue and the Catwoman issue, but overall, like, it does feel like some of these issues were going all over the place. We're cutting between too many gang members, too many things. And that's why I like the Robin issue, because it told a more personal story within the crossover, and it was more focused.
Yeah.
But I think that grade's going to go down because there's a lot of very uncomfortable. There's a lot of stuff coming. DC was criticized, rightfully so, for some misogynistic women in refrigerator stuff that happens in future chapters of this.
Okay. Something to look forward to.
Yeah. Do you have any theories on who the person talking to Hush was, the unseen?
Well, if I feel like it might be Black Mask. but I don't know.
Mhm.
Just because I know that he does play a part, so I'm like, well, who else would they not be revealing that might do it? But that's my only guess.
Would you believe the Kingpin?
I would love it to be the Kingpin. I love that fat little guy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he lost some weight, went to the DC universe, and he's coordinating more
might
games.
happen. He's looking for Vanessa.
I started rewatching that show for like because I never finished it. So like I want to finish it before the new one comes
The new
out.
one comes out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I would agree. I think I would give it an 8. There's some great issues in there. I think Alamo High, the Robin issue and the Catwoman issue would probably be my favorite of the two. But yeah, no, I have some questions, and we're only looking at a piece of it, so it's hard for me to give like a huge rating. Really, that final rating I think is going to count most of war games overall. But I'll give it an 8 out of 10. What should we say? What should the rating system be? 8 out of 10.
Oh, okay, let's think.
Yeah, did anything funny happen? I don't know.
It's also tragic.
It is
Um,
all, yeah, pretty bad.
um,
I don't know. Sweaty Nightwings. 8 out of
sweaty,
10 sweaty Nightwings.
sweaty dicks.
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
Listen, you
whoa,
said sweaty Nightwings. Nightwing's real name is Dick Grayson. It's
whoa. Well, it's a pleasure. Of course, we're going to continue, so I won't make it seem like we're saying goodbye, since I'll see you next month. But can you tell the people where they can find and support you?
Certainly. So, as I mentioned, I am on DCComics.com has rebranded to DC.com. So on DC.com, if you click on the news section, I write content for them every month, every week. And I'm proud to say, for the past few years, I've been the writer of DC's official monthly Batman column, which is a cool, surreal thing to say right now. I'm like, I write the official Batman column for DC. That's weird to say. But usually it's like Easter eggs, interviews, fun things like that. So that makes me very happy, to be a part of the DC family. And they let me come onto this podcast and call Batman a jerk because what are they going to do about it?
Yeah,
They
no.
publish the books. They know he's a jerk.
Yeah, they lean
I'm
into
also,
it.
yeah. I also provide content for the popverse.com. Popverse, it's a shoot off of the company Read Pop that does a lot of the comic conventions. And, I actually primarily do Marvel stuff there since like my DC stuff is on DC.com. Popverse has allowed me to really scratch my Marvel itch, and finally like write about Marvel for the first time in like years because, with Batman Universe and DC stuff, like every time I enjoyed a Marvel thing, I was like, oh, I wish I had an outlet for this. And now I do. I did a piece I'm very proud of, which is the history of Jill Gerald. She is the first reoccurring Black woman in Marvel Comics. And I did like a deep dive, research piece on her. So that was a lot of fun to put together. So that is where the people can find me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but that is the extent of it for the moment.
Okay, until Gotham is revived.
Oh man, it was really hard for me to do that last season because of Gotham Chronicle. Just because by then I was working for DC Universe and like to do a weekly podcast at the same time as like writing assignments. It's just it was very hard to keep up, and I was like, oh, I'm actually glad that like we're
Yeah,
ending the podcast now because I
I
can't.
have more
But
free time.
yeah, many fond memories. I tried to do another podcast about a year ago. Why Batman is a horrible boyfriend. There's if you look for it on YouTube, I tried it as a video podcast. I think that there's 1 or 2 episodes up.
Okay.
But it was. I said maybe if I just do a short video podcast, like that'll be easy. No, it wasn't.
I know.
I don't have I don't have time to do anything that I'm not being paid for, folks.
Yeah.
Like
Video things are rough. Yeah. I like that I can just drop this on
yeah,
YouTube and
I
go.
was like,
But
if Popverse or like DC offers me, money to do a video or audio podcast, then I will
yeah.
do it again. But I think these are labors of love. And
Yeah.
actually, I spoke about that with my second time mentioning John Wilson this call. he asked me what I was coming on for, and I said War Games, and he was like, "Wow, Stella's really far." And I said, "Listen, everyone else that was doing this at the same time as Stella, they took like years breaks, month-long breaks. No shade on any of them because we're not getting paid for this. We're doing this for fun. These are hobbies. But like Stella, she has never taken a long hiatus. She has never like, lost her momentum. So like, yeah, all these other like read through podcasts have taken detours or stopped completely, including some ones that I've been on and some ones that I've started. You have almost closed the gap. You are a few years away from Brian Q.
Yeah.
Miller's Batgirl issue 1.
And then the podcast will be no more.
Or you could just make it an infinite loop where you like re-release like the old
Good
episodes.
Lord. Good Lord.
And
Well, it'd
it's
be
just like,
interesting to look at some of those Silver Age stories with a modern eye and
oh
an
no, I don't even
older, decades older Stella.
I don't even mean record them again. I mean like you
Oh,
just release it again as if like,
oh
and
my
now we're
gosh.
going into 2009 with Batgirl 1. And then you just like play yourself from like, and people are like, why is she talking about Barack Obama being president?
I don't know that I ever talked about Barack Obama, but
And
yeah,
it's
and the wind issues. Yeah, that he did.
and like Smallville's still on, or like whatever like
Yeah.
topical like references there would be.
That's why you shouldn't date a podcast so you can do that, I guess.
Yeah, there you
Yeah.
go.
Yeah.
Oh man, well, what do we have here that's dated that we'll never be able to like mention again?
Oh, here on this episode?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Have we said anything dated?
I don't think so. Unfortunately, I feel like school shootings will be a continual problem, so that we won't be able to date that. Yeah, I mean, Donovan throwing pizzas, he may not do it anymore,
That's
but we know
eternal.
someone else is. Yeah, so
Yeah, it's eternal.
it's eternal. Well, a pleasure per usual. So I'll see you in July for Act 2. Can't wait to see what that is like.
It's a summer of Stella. I love it.
Yeah, Summer So and Josue. So we're gonna take a break. When I come back, I will do listener emails. I think I'll probably try to catch up on Nightwing. I think I'm 3 behind, though I heard Barbara's not really involved in some of the issues. And then I'll do a full review of the Batgirls finale, Batgirls number 19. But first, it is Zias's Radio Hour featuring Billy's Got a Gun by Def Leppard. See you soon.
Just plain Barbara Gordon. Oh wait.